don't think I see you crying in your cars, but I do. Sometimes I can feel it at a red light, someone at my side trying to muddle through. See them wiping their eyes in the rear view, like black hole sun in the sky. Why the fuck won't you come when I need you? Well, this moment in time is as close as we'll be and as far as I'll meet you. Two windows in between us, new moon in the house of Venus. One stranger who sees you and reads your features knows that your alibi might be tight, but it's not quite leak-proof. So if you're sitting at the light and you're crying in your car, just know that I see you. And it's a 50-50 that I'm bloodshot, gun-shy, once bitten, twice tried, ribs pried wide to the sky till I'm see-through.
That's you, in case you don't recognize yourself.
You don't think I see you struggling to breathe, but I do. I see you stumble in your everyday grief like I do. I try, but I do. I'm twice bitten too. My mind's split in two. My knuckles bright white from the 10 to the 2. And the song in my head is the theme for a fugue, a state of decay through the filter of corporate news, where they edit the grays and the blues. They whitewash the brown till they drown out the natural hues. And then it's just another fact to refuse, that the corporate ladders for hanging the company noose. Consider it one of your perks, after all it's communal in use. So you can come and hang till your legs go limp and they're shaking you loose. Now you watch 5 co-workers opt for the alternate exit, neatly suspended above where you wolf down your food. And your company gets its incentives embellished by harping on wellness, suggesting you'd best take time for your mental health after your 14 hours are through. Like we gave you a bottle to piss in and fixed up a noose on the crossbeam. Christ, what more can we do? So if you struggle to breathe any moment that you aren't asleep, then remember, most of Americans fear for their savings, fear for their shelter, fear for their babies. You aren't the fringe of exception, but rather a perfect example of capital's rule. And you're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. You're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. I see you crying in your cars, but I do. False alarm, I thought that help was here. But it was my own reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into am I the asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. Half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the Bezos fear condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. man, to each his own. Can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere. Where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink 'em twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
That's how it goes. We won't open our eyes, so we're the last ones to know. We're the last ones alive. Kept our enemies close. Wondered why we don't thrive while we're grasping at ghosts. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5.
Count back from 5. The theater on fire, the cast on strike. The studio stock starts taking a dive. The contracts tossed and they're gone with the tide. The heads and execs, their hands are tied. We can't pump this dreck and treat you right. But what do you expect from the industry type who survive by the leeching of bodies and minds? From those who original thoughts never seem to find. So they're gonna reboot ALF before your wages rise. And it gives cause to pause and reflect on the times. If they're losing control of their fools and their mimes, when all those obedient actors who grew their careers by averting their eyes are now holding the line, along with the authors of countless scripts that strengthen the hand of that corporate grip, squeezing our throats till we take the pen and we accept and consent to the corporate drip. Till you're all up to date on your pharma du jour, till you got a healthy support for the war on your lips. And now you know that the advertisers need more than a rerun summer full of flashback clips. Enter the scans from the year before, all the days of de-aging and mapping the face, and the hours of actors recording their voices are links in the chains that will bind them in place. Now all of those shows are so easy to make. When they got a drone they control that needs no break, it can bend, it can break, and it's cheaply replaced enough up-to-date films all in one take. And those studios bank on us doing our duty, unhinging our jaws and digesting the fakes. Because they know that we'll love how synthetic it tastes. Watch as they edit your features without any trace. Not that there's anything you could do anyway. Now watch as they show you a movie you saying shit you would never say. Dystopia boldly accelerates. Maybe you're only a mold, something to fill with a clone, something that Elon would celebrate. Something they own, something they program and code, something that's woefully able to know it's exanimate. Cause it doesn't feel touch over top of the laminate. You will not feel an emotion, but they will not scan and examine it. You and the other consumer contaminants fed on the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment.
Where did you think we'd go? Love, there's nowhere to lie. Guess it's not who you know, more it's what you can hide. Like we're chained to the floor, they're streaming us live while we're watching the war, counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards. let you go, set you free, send you home. Wait, please say you know what you need is what you owed, and they won't let you go, set you free, send you home.
I was close enough to smell the fire. Jesus took the wheel and then he kicked me off the ride. I was busy shouting at myself from in the crowd, about to throw down and drag myself outside. I had to give myself the business. When I show myself forgiveness, it goes right between the eyes. Was looking past my shoulder, never focused on the prize. I stalked myself through burning sand the better part of 40 nights. I found myself staring in the mirror, yelling, go into the light. Cause I was in the rear view, staring at the highway, horrified. I was in the road ahead, arms wide, ready to be mummified. Gonna be the fella yelling how he's sick of always betting on his life. I'll also be the guy that brought the dice. Half a dozen chambers and I keep an empty 5. Only needed one to break the ice. Only needed one to clear my mind. Only needed one to stop time.
Wait, please say you know what you need is what you owed, and they won't let you go, set you free, send you home.
I'll be the guy that brought the dice.
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Have peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Liberation is the answer. Liberation.
INN News.
What up, dudes? We're back. We did it.
We're back.
You missed us for 3 weeks. There's a whole new look. There's a whole new feel and vibe and stuff. So hopefully you enjoy that. Colin's back. You were gallivanting around Europe.
Hold on. In honor of our new look. Should I? Yeah, this one. Might as well.
Oh shit, Collin with the shades and shit. He got that shit on. What are those?
Actually, no, I'm gonna take these off because I
can't see shit.
At least now, because the light's in my face. But
what up, fam?
Yeah. We're back. Yes, I was away. I was on I was in London for the last
London
couple
town.
weeks, visiting family and all of that. But as we said before we went on our hiatus, we took the opportunity to, we've been actually, we should explain all of this because I think for our folks, our fam here, because this is a major upgrade for us in terms of the show since we started. And we've talked about doing this for a minute. We've probably been talking about this really for about a year or so, how we felt a lot of our graphics were they were fine for the time, but they were a little outdated. We kind of got sick, well, you more so got kind of sick of
Yeah.
same graphics, the same intro over and over again. And things have changed in 2.5, 3 years that we've been doing this. So,
yeah.
We talked about it for a year, but I think once we actually figured out that, oh, I'm going to be away. And we figured that this was the time to get a lot of this stuff done. So part of our hiatus was mostly you. So I have to give you your flowers a bit because you were instrumental in a lot of the graphics that you see now, to get everything together in time for tonight. I want to kind of shout you out a little bit because I know you don't get a lot of recognition, but you're very talented in terms of the tech stuff. So, and especially this stuff, I have no idea how to do this shit. So, so shout out to you. But I think there's also several other people behind the scenes who we should thank. We have to thank. So the opening intro, in terms of the visuals, you didn't do that. We had to hire someone on Fiverr in order to get that done. Correct? So shout out to Golam Mortuza.
One thing.
Whoa.
I broke it. It's okay.
Yeah, so
I'm
where's
gonna go
he from?
here.
Yeah.
This one.
So
this is our
where's
super magic everything moving one, which my
Right.
CPU doesn't like, but it's fun for you guys. You guys get to see us
Maybe.
fly around and whatnot, but this one's a little easier on the old eyes.
Right.
So,
But yeah, Golam Mortuza, you found, we found on Fiverr, who we kind of took a risk on because his work, seeing his portfolio, his work was good.
Yeah.
But actually, you know what? I think this and all could be a segment. Let's start from the beginning, because we definitely have a theme here. So, you want to kind of explain?
We just like
at least
cool robots. It's pretty cool. Robots are cool. We grew up. I grew up in the 90s. Cool robot shows were kind of the thing. Big fan of Toonami back in the day. Where there's cool robots. Like it's simple. Cool robots are cool. We're gonna have cool robots on the show. So,
yeah, I think definitely. You definitely kind of see in our mind the anime, like mecha genre influence. But we also felt, what Golam did, because we saw his work and it's definitely more in the aesthetic realm, but not like this. But we figured, okay, there might be something there that we were kind of interested to see, given the song that we use, and we'll talk about the song in a minute. The opening music and the closing music, if you guys stick around to the end, we have a new sequence for that too.
Yeah, new outro. New anime outro. It's going to be fun.
We came up... So basically the idea was if you're gonna go kind of like Evangelion or like
Yeah.
post
Gundam. Zorgs? Wasn't that one? Zorg? Someone remembers. Someone in the chat remembers.
The only thing I think of Zords is in Power Rangers.
Yeah, that's a different one. It was like animal robots, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, Voltron?
No. I'll find it. I can use Google.
But yeah, kind of like a apocalyptic like world somewhat, which in some ways kind of doing this show. I feel like in the stories that we cover kind of feels like that. And then obviously, if you guys are familiar with Neon Genesis Evangelion, like the idea of the protagonist Shinji Ikari was getting into the robot, and I think I've said that before. At times, I feel especially
Zoids.
Doing
that's it.
Zoids, yeah. Doing this show in a lot of ways makes me feel like I'm getting in the robot in terms of I feel like, or even going on Twitter/X sometimes feels like you're going inside an alternate universe. So I feel like that kind of way. This is, I think, your way and my way of feeling like we're literally getting in the robot every time we do this show.
Yeah.
So
Plus, if anyone has looked at my setup, it's definitely a spaceship cockpit. So it feels right at home here. Like But anyway, we brought some stories.
So shout out, but shout out to Golam for the opening credits. Once again, shout out to JJ Joe Nice for the music he's letting us use once again. So he did the music for our old intro, and he actually presented me, because I forgot for what reason, but last summer he presented me with this song here, which is called Liberation. Which is inspired by the Kwame Ture clip where he talks about liberation. And we've played that on the show before. And I don't think he saw that we had played that before. But then, once I heard it, I was like, can we please have it? So, of course, DJ Joe Nice, and shout out to LSN and Drizza, who also, depending on the version you hear, also incorporated their talents towards both remixes. Contributed to the music, so they were very kind to let us use it. So shout out to them, and Reef, of course, for doing many of the graphics that you see here, and then with the closing credits with some AI tech, which I feel kind of mixed about, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think it turned out good though.
Voila, we have new graphics, at least for a while. So hope you guys like it. So if you stick around toward the end, you'll see some new surprises. Definitely check out. We'll probably put it out on the network as clips in of themselves, because we think. But I think mostly we just kind of wanted a little bit more of a story, honestly. Kind of like you can watch it like a short movie, kind of. So that's kind of the theme that we're kind of going with. We think it kind of worked out pretty well, at least for the opening, for sure. There's definitely that story there. But something a little bit more general that if things change, we didn't have to change
19 million things, right?
Things versus what we would have had to do before. So, but yeah, so
and I could do this. Like, what? We're in the green one. What? Get out of the green one. Go to the red one. Oh, the red one's dope. I like it. All right.
I actually didn't know you did all of that.
I mean, honestly. It's just, it's just adding another image. It's easy peasy,
Okay.
So whatever.
Oh, so you're gonna be playing with that.
Sure.
I guess.
Right. Speaking of, we brought this stuff. So
so right back into it, and First story I'm going to do. So even here, new graphics. So the first story I'm going to do, and this is going to be an example of to hell what's trending. I'm just going to do what the hell I want.
Yeah.
So this first segment is actually inspired by my dad, who obviously I was visiting him and family members while I was away, and we had a discussion about this. Some of this stuff I did kind of know, but he kind of filled in some of the gaps for me. But I felt it was kind of important to maybe share, at least kind of keep it as an evergreen segment, because we tend to do that here sometimes, but something we can refer back to just kind of as a general thing. But this is kind of one of those hidden history things that, unless if you are from the Caribbean or even in Europe, you may not necessarily know about this. So we're going to talk about the Barbados slave code. So obviously, being of my family is, at least on my dad's side, is of Bajan descent. Obviously, this definitely ties in for me and my ancestry, but little do you know that there is some connection with this code with the states. So
Okay.
we're going to share that first. So we're going to learn some stuff.
Learning.
We're going to learn some new stuff tonight, as we tend to do. And then later on tonight, I think definitely, and I would argue this has kind of popped off during our hiatus, that mainstream media has now decided that it's okay to talk about Gaza in the sense of genocide, now that it's gotten to the point where Gaza is at stage 5 of starvation. So basically, it's at the point now where of no return, that basically any aid that comes in, regardless, people are dying anyway. And I feel like I have thoughts on this, because while I'm glad that people are talking about it this way, it's also kind of like too little too late. Whereas a lot of us in independent media have been kind of sharing, and you particularly have been sharing, a lot of you, like with the stories you've brought in particular, you've been able to fill in the gaps for a while. And it is infuriating to me that now mainstream media is now decided to catch on.
Well, they're only calling it a humanitarian crisis, like they haven't even gotten to the full G word yet.
If that, like, there are some outlets that are now calling it a genocide. I just feel like you're 6 to 9 months too late.
Yeah, you're way late.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So, so what we try to do, I'm going to share it from the perspective of a Palestinian teen, who's talking about her experience currently. And then what did you bring?
Well, while you were over in the UK, everything seemed to pop off over there. So, they recently enacted a internet safety law. So we're going to get into the ramifications of that and how it might affect us over here very soon. In fact, sooner than you might think. But we're gonna talk about that and just internet censorship, and I'm gonna join you in talking about Gaza starving and in stage 5 famine, and we're gonna get into that. So that's what I brought. So you ready to get into things? Ready?
Yeah, but as usual, we have to remind our family. So thank you guys so much. Actually, even if within the last few weeks that we've been away, you guys have been really showing us love. And actually, some of our old clips have kind of made a renaissance. So thank you for that. You guys have been watching our content even though we've been away, which is definitely a nice feeling that certain clips, I think, are standing the test of time and people are watching them, or the algorithm is being nice to us and picking it up. That being said, the algorithm hates us because we are not talking about the things that are trendy. And not the kind of stuff that would be satisfactory to donors and AdSense. So YouTube is no longer monetizing us, which is fine because we don't want to follow what YouTube says we should cover. We want to follow what we believe should be covered, and more importantly, what you guys would like to cover, or we hope that you guys appreciate us in covering. So, so our funding comes from you. Truly, it does. Everything that we've been able to do, more importantly, the things that we've been have to pay for, like case in point, all these graphics here. We had to spend some money in order to pay for a lot of this stuff, and then just the equipment that we use in order to run the show and shows in the network. So if you want to support us in this fashion, feel free to scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're in our YouTube chat, feel free to type in !donate, all one word. The Ko-fi link will pop up. You can click right on it, and anything as low as $1 helps us. As we say every week, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, take care of your communities before you give to us. We know that money is tight. And for many of you who have kids, it's time to think about back to school. So all the things in preparation for the fall and all that stuff. So any extra, that being said, any extra money you do have that you're willing to give to us, we more than appreciate it. We also will accept donations through Substack, PayPal, and
Cash App.
Cash App.
Yep.
Those links will be in the description below, as they always will be. And a huge shout out to all of we probably should update that to kind of align with the aside. Well, that's on my so shout out to all of our INM fam who have given to us any amount at any point since we kicked off this channel, but more especially the people who are highlighted are like our VIPs. You have a special surprise at the end. If you check us out, watch us to the end of the stream, we have a little surprise for you guys as a thank you, as one way we want to say thank you. And I think that's it. Other than you guys know the routine, like, share, subscribe, do all the things so we can grow. Not in the way that we would like to, but at least we're kind of growing with you guys. And that hopefully more people will be able to see our content. So thank you guys so much. And thank you guys for waiting patiently for us to come back. We love you. And we're glad we were back. At least I know Reef is. I know he missed me while I was away. So
definitely
with nothing to do. Or not much to do, rather.
What do you got?
So what I got. So our first story tonight. As I said earlier, I'm just going to do what the fuck I want on this show. I usually do anyway, or I usually get my way to talk about things that Reef may not want me to. But I was inspired to talk about this segment from my dad. My dad is a Pan-Africanist, very much wanting Black liberation throughout the whole African diaspora. My dad's originally from Barbados. And when I was at his work, just talking to him about another thing, he mentioned the Barbados Slave Code. And there was some information that I didn't even know in terms of how it has part of the reason of how slavery came to be, and we'll get into more details later, in this country was due to the practices that were basically initiated in Barbados, believe it or not. So what do you mean by that, Collin? So let's just get right into it. This is a little history lesson for a lot of you all that you may not even know if you lived in the States. So as you guys might know, Barbados is a small island in the east of the Caribbean. former British colony, and all of that. So this comes from HistoryPlex. Never heard of them before prior to pulling this segment together. But we're going to talk about the purpose and significance of the Barbados Slave Code of 1661. So notice that date.
Who are these
So
Hey.
oh,
Already with the
thank
big
you,
monies
Steph.
coming in. Appreciate it, Steph.
Collin
Appreciate you.
the bomb. Thank you for the $5.
Yeah.
Love that. Great way to come back. But let's get into the Barbados Slave Code, shall we? So according to HistoryPlex, slavery is not a passé subject. It is a form of human bondage that has its roots in ancient history. Chattel slavery was barbarous, and it originated with the Barbados Slave Code of 1661. This HistoryPlex post discusses the purpose and significance of this slave code. So, Emancipation Day is celebrated on the first day of August in Barbados to mark the abolition of slavery. It dates back to the slave uprising on the island called the Rebellion of 1816, which was led by a slave named Busa. And actually, if you look at the thumbnail, the guy that is in chains doing this is Busa, which you can find in Barbados. So I probably should do a segment on him at some point. But anyway, for a time. For the British monarchy, expanding the empire and establishing colonies all around the world was a prime objective, especially colonizing sugar plantation-rich areas that would certainly profit the British economy. To many of the British settlers in the 1600s, enslaving Africans was acceptable on the basis that they were non-Christians, as their numbers, meaning slaves, increased in Virginia and Maryland. Colonies there soon began a history of demarcation in the name of race, which developed into a set of laws for the Africans known as slave code. This code not only legalized slavery, but also allowed masters to carry out barbarous atrocities on the slaves. The origin of this code was Barbados, an island abundant in sugar plantations, and to reap benefits of these so-called plantation economies, the Barbados Slave Code in 1661 was established. Given below are its salient features. So we'll go into many of them. Go back.
I did it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. In 1536, Portuguese explorer Pedro Campos halted in Barbados en route to Brazil and named the island Los Barbados, meaning the bearded lawn. So most people think it may be, I forgot what kind of tree it is. That kind of looks like it had a beard. So that's one myth as to where the island got its name.
Gotcha.
Just a little about that. Even though the island was known to the Portuguese and Spanish, the British would claim it as their own in 1625, and thus began a history of slavery on the island. The first English settlement was set up as a proprietary colony and was financed by Sir William Corton, a London merchant who owned the claim to Barbados and several other islands. Thus, the first colonists were, in reality, tenants, and a substantial amount of their profits was reverted to Corton and his company. On May 14, 1625, the first English ship, captained by John Powell, along with his crew and 10 slaves, arrived and claimed the uninhabited land for England. On February 17, 1627, his brother, Captain Henry Powell, touched down with a party of 80 settlers and 10 African slaves. They established the first European settlement called Jamestown on the western coast, which is now known as Whole Town. The slaves imported into Barbados came from various tribes like the Igbos, Papas, and Igbo, which is my ancestry, by the way, one of them, of the forests of West Africa. They arrived via slave trade ports on the African west coast. Such forts were known as the Axum and Elmina. After being swapped for trinkets, the slaves were shipped to the Caribbean and sold to plantation owners. In 1636, a law declared that all slaves brought into Barbados, whether African or Amerindian indigenous, were to be enslaved for life, which later extended to include their offspring. In 1642, the sugar revolution took over when the Dutch introduced sugarcane farming. By the mid-1600s, sugarcane plantations were developing and exporting sugar, appealing wealthy landlords with political associations. As the cost of white labor rose in England, more slaves were imported from West Africa, particularly the Gold Coast, and more black slaves arrived in Barbados. The main groups of slaves imported were from the Ibibo, Yoruba, Libo, and Efik, as well as Asante, Fante, Ga, and Fang tribes. So basically, all those tribes were either mostly in what is now known as Nigeria or Ghana.
Yeah.
By the mid-1600s, there were estimated 5,700 Black African slaves in Barbados, and by the early 1800s, over 385,000. By the 1700s, Barbados was one of the leaders in the slave trade from the European colonies. African slaves were referred to as black gold, and they were the obvious choice as they were strong, and Africa lay close to Europe than the Caribbean. Slave ships traveled faster, aided by the trade winds blowing towards the west, and hence the slaves were chained and cramped into filthy ships to be sold into permanent slavery. As the import of slaves increased, the African population outnumbered the white population, causing paranoia and concern among the plantation owners against an onset of revolt. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
This led to each colony to pass a series of laws restraining the slave behavior, which became known as the Slave Code. The Barbados Slave Code of 1661 was the first code to be passed in the Caribbean island among the English colonies. Subsequently, these codes were applied in the American English colonies of Virginia, Maryland, and South Carolina. And apparently, not just them, Massachusetts, and Georgia as well.
Yeah.
Basically, more or less, all the original 13 colonies in the States have some form or another of slave codes, which were inspired or partially inspired by
this one,
the Barbados Slave Code. So I thought this was kind of important because, one, I bet in U.S. history they didn't teach you any of this at all.
No, definitely not my.
A lot. Right.
Go ahead.
But number two, and I think this is kind of more important, this is kind of one of the reasons why when we learn history, we have to have a little more global scope, because we kind of think of slavery as
an American issue.
An American
it is not.
Invention. It is not. Now, slavery, you can argue, it's
trade fucking, like, the whole triangle, like multiple countries.
Right. And this is why I say to people in terms of, slavery, especially given American history, like and especially for people who are looking for reparations, you cannot just blame the American system, like this is why. And this is, I think, one of the things that, especially like certain groups, I'm not going to name them because I'm tired of naming them, do not want you to know, or just are ignorant to that they're not going to make this connection. That a lot of why slavery happened, especially in our case, was based upon the British and based upon the Caribbean. So it will work in your favor to kind of have a better understanding of the connection between Europe, Africa, and America, in order to have a better scope as to, essentially, as if you're a Black person living in the West, why essentially you were enslaved. Because it's not just limited to, and again, I'm all for if you're looking for reparations as a Black person in this country, but you have to also understand that it's a lot bigger than what you think, just trying to limit yourself to the American standpoint. Because once again, given the dates, this was all in the 1600s. The U.S. did not become their own independent nation until 100 years after this. So if you're going to have beef with America, you need to have beef with Western Europe as well, in terms of this. So, but also, and I'll get into this more a little bit later, but this is very reminiscent of currently, if you want to look at current events, of what's happening in Gaza as well. because somewhat, in terms of these are white settlers coming in, and using, and this is what's special about slavery in terms of the West, in terms of using it as profit. That's the difference between, oh, there was slaves. Yes, there was slaves. Like in the human experience, there's always been slaves, but slavery back, at least if you're thinking about the Roman Empire, whatever, was more connected to, I guess, to indentured servitude. This was the first time in history that slavery was used as a profit tool. And I read it earlier that, white indentured servants who would have done the work as well,
right,
were too expensive. So I wonder if people kind of caught that African slaves were considered black gold because essentially you didn't have to worry about them,
physically being able,
right. But I think more importantly, like the idea of like if you were indentured servitude, you were granted your freedom at some point.
Right.
Black people were regarded as property. Like, I would argue even less than a dog, because I would argue at least dogs had a little more respect than black slaves. I probably would argue even that in the same way now in certain aspects. So, but yeah, I think this is kind of very important to have this kind of mindset of thinking more globally in terms of issues that are not insular to the States, which I think generally in our history books we tend to think as American and everyone else, when it's all connected. So let's get into more of this. Though these slave codes received legalized status and were supposed to protect the working rights of the slaves, but in contrast, they proved beneficial for the plantation owners and masters. Again, sound familiar? Like, does that sound like a law policy that we have that is meant to, quote unquote, protect the workers, but instead is really to protect the establishment more so? So even back then, they were pulling this bullshit. Under the provision of the law, the masters were to provide one set of clothing to the slaves every year, which consisted of a coarse material to be used as clothing. In reality, the masters lent out harsh punishments to slaves for minor mistakes, which included mutilation of body parts, burning the face or burning them alive, public flogging, sexual harassment, starvation, and forced conversions to Christianity. They were subject to chattel slavery. The word chattel is equivalent to cattle, which means that the master has total ownership of his slaves, and they were treated worse than animals at the hands of their masters. So, little vocab there. Slaves were not allowed to own any property, nor assemble or form groups without the presence of their master. Again, control. They were subjected to special curfews after working hours and prohibited from traveling in the fear they would run away. In court, slaves never received pardon, even if they were innocent, nor never allowed to witness or testify against a white man's crime. A similar impact was seen in the English American colonies. Virginia legalized slavery in 1661. In 1662, a law was passed ensuring that children born to black mothers would also be regarded as slaves in spite of being fathered by white men. Now, who was that to protect?
Thomas Jefferson.
Maryland legalized. What's
mainly that? Thomas Jefferson, mainly. That
exactly. Maryland legalized slavery in 1663 and passed a law punishing marriages between a white woman and slaves, saying that the woman who married a slave would serve her husband's master and their children would directly inherit the slave status.
Okay, so it goes both ways. Like, gotcha.
In 1664, slavery was legalized in New York and New Jersey. In 1667, Virginia enacted a law that ordained baptism was not a means to free themselves. A 1676 law prohibited free black citizens from employing white servants. Virginia passed 2 consecutive acts in 1681 that mixed Native Americans and Africans into one class as Negroes, and other slaves.
Mm.
A 1669 law adjudged that if a slave passed away while protesting his master, the master could not be accused of felony. An 1680 law
1680.
imposed, yeah, a 1680 law imposed 20 lashes on any Negro or other slave who chose to carry a weapon or travel without their masters or mistresses' written permission. In some cases, the laws were quite specific, such as pig stealing was punished by nailing the thief's severed ears to a pillory post. There were directly given death penalty for lesser crimes such as ruining any stack of rice, corn, or other grain, or setting fire to any tar kiln, barrels of pitch, tar, turpentine, or rosin. Slaves were used both as variability for borrowing money and also as assets in the requital of debts. Creditors had first claim on slaves in settlements of debts. Slaves who had been freed could be re-enslaved if necessary to consolidate their late master's debts. These series of inhuman laws passed one after another in succession to the Barbados Slave Code of 1661 slowly gave way to revolts by the captured slaves in the Caribbean island. Slavery was abolished in Barbados in 1834, which was followed by a 4-year apprenticeship period through which free men carried on a 45-hour week without pay, in substitute for dwelling in tiny huts provided by the plantation owners. So, again, does that sound familiar?
Yep.
Doesn't that sound like capitalism? Well, Reconstruction, essentially.
Yep, that too.
So, what was happening in the States was happening on the islands as well.
Right.
So, and just as a fun fact, I'm trying to remember when my grandmother was born. I think she was born on my dad's side, I believe in 1890, I believe.
Okay.
So, and slavery was abolished, allegedly, in 1834. So my grandmother was born about 40 years, allegedly, after slavery. And I say allegedly because even like by the time she was born, there was still remnants of
Yeah.
the slave code still happening even then, like at the turn of the century. So
Well, like people forget that it's really not that long ago, you know?
No.
Like it's a couple generations, you know? Like
Right. Right.
So
but a lot of the attitudes, especially around the slave code, existed during my grandmother's time. So so really, yeah, it was abolished, but I think just the attitude and especially the treatment, of Black people on the islands hadn't gone away completely, especially given that, as we said back then, they were basically like sharecroppers, basically living on plantations by the time my grandmother was born and living, so didn't go away completely. Freedom from slavery was finally realized in 1838. As I was saying, maybe on paper, but not necessarily in practice. At the conclusion of the apprenticeship period, when over 70,000 Barbadians of African descent celebrated on the streets, singing and dancing to Barbados folk songs. So, again, just wanted to kind of bring that up in terms of, just how significant that the Barbados Slave Code was and how influential it was to developing the slave codes in the States. So, just to give you, some perspective on that. So I do actually want to kind of go into more specifics of, the slave code in South Carolina, given the ties between Barbados and South, because a lot of Bajan slaves ended up in South Carolina in particular, and then
the Gullah people, right?
The
whole area,
but then and then actually Georgia, this is something that my dad told me. I believe the first 6 governors of South Carolina were Bajan settlers.
Okay.
So, So they were the ones that actually, knowing the slave code, implemented a lot of those practices directly based on the work that was done in Barbados. So, but I did want to bring this up very quick. This is David Hartwood, famous actor. He is of Bajan descent. I think he lives in UK. And he, so this was taken from the Smithsonian Channel. So he went to Barbados to learn a little bit more about the slave code and its impact, given for him as a person of Bajan descent, but also, given, obviously his ancestry and his culture. So it's about 4 minutes. So if you want to play when you're ready, you can.
Can't help but think of all those ships arriving with millions of Africans, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, children, and just being chucked into some small holding and people grabbing your sister and brothers and selling them to complete strangers. If you think about all of that trauma, it plays a part in my own sense of the dislocation of my identity. Who am I? Where do I come from?
David now wants to find out how the enslaved were treated once they had been auctioned off to English settlers. He's come to the Barbados Museum and Historical Society.
Okay.
The museum documents how the British established a brutal model of slavery here that would soon be exported to other colonies.
Okay, so let's see if I can find them here for you.
It was known as the Slave Code, a system of laws and punishments which would become the model for slavery in America.
This volume makes it very clear that Africans were property, they were not individual human beings. And the question might occur, why were laws needed? Well, a very simple situation occurs where within 20 years of the establishment of a sugar economy in the island, the enslaved population outnumbered in a very significant way the white plantocracy. And they felt the need for a certain level of control.
Shortly after getting into the colony, you see change over time where the majority of the population are people of African descent. And so these English colonists are controlling their property. So they create these slave codes that dictate status, limits of freedom, what types of abuses can be imparted upon people of African descent if they attempt to run away or if they are seen as unruly.
If any Negro or slave whatsoever shall offer any violence to any Christian by striking or the like, such Negro or slave shall for his or her first offense be severely whipped by the constable. For a second offense of that nature, he shall be severely whipped, his nose slit, and be burned in some part of his face with a hot iron.
And reading that slave code, that was British, that was English. It's an English invention that was franchised to several different countries. The idea that I am not human, that I have no soul, that I am a beast. Brand me, burn me, whatever, and no recourse, nothing, because I'm not human. And I think that's fundamental to understand how that has affected and informed racism.
Yeah, so I think David kind of says it well. Like, this is kind of the basis of racism. And again, we think of it as a quote unquote an American construct. Well, it's a Western construct, but like I think when we think of race, especially given how toxic it is in America, we kind of think, oh, this is an American invention. No, it was British, essentially given, like you could see kind of like the roots of all of that starting from the slave code in terms of like pitting like even like white indentured servants with African slaves, even though they were doing the same work. At least if you were white and indentured servant, you had the opportunity to gain your freedom. And if anything, if you were a white indentured servant back then, once you gain your freedom, you were allowed to have slaves yourself. You were able to own property. You were able to have property. You were able to own slaves. Black people did not have that privilege. Again, you were treated, you were property to be sold off. And like, you know, like again, this was happening in Barbados, and you know, certain slaves, if you were in Barbados, depending on the needs of in the colonies, you know, you could have been shipped from a Caribbean island and shipped to the States, or vice versa. If they needed you, if you were in the States and they needed you, like depending on what crops they needed, in the Caribbean, you could have been sent from the States and sent back. So like,
sugar,
like,
cotton,
you know,
tobacco.
Right. Like you were essentially you were property in the name of capitalism. Black people.
Yeah.
So, you know, so and you know, so again, like this shouldn't be taken lightly. And I think for a lot of people, they have a problem with that history because it seemingly makes us look weak in terms of how can Black people be almost allowed to be put in that situation to become property. I think it's a lot more romantic to kind of think about, oh, Black people were indigenous to America. And somehow, whether in that revisionist history, that we owned this land and we own culture. No, like, no, like, you know, I get the shame, but in order to kind of deal with it, and this is why I say to these people, like, if you owned this land, you did a shitty job of maintaining it because the white people essentially took over.
Right.
And you have nothing to show for it. So,
well, it's also the history's so far removed too, you know, like it's you know, it's ancient history for a lot of people who aren't paying attention to any of it. You know, they're going about their daily lives. So, you know, it's easy to kind of like rewrite and wash over it, you know. So
but I think it's a lot easier if people do not understand the connections as to certain things happen in certain ways due to other people, maybe not even from your country, influencing them. And, you know, again, like if people understood that these slave codes, again, that were British in scope, that were developed on a small island in the Caribbean, actually influenced, I would argue, the Atlantic slave trade.
Yeah.
I think people would kind of think about the diaspora a little differently. Maybe. Like it's not just synonymous, it's not just isolated to one particular country or one particular region of the country. No, this is an enterprise. Like in the same way what we're looking at Gaza, you might think of that, oh, this is just a Palestinian thing. No, it's not.
Yeah,
this
it's international.
Western, it's international, bitch.
If you look at how we're going to get to this later tonight about how you know, laws and governance in those places, especially against the subjugated, get pushed around the globe very quickly. So, but speaking
especially
of regions,
when it's in terms,
go ahead.
It's well, just really quickly, especially in terms of wanting to exploit people.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
It's very easy to get
exploitation and control.
International backing, especially if there's money or resources or fill in the blank involved.
Yeah.
But that being said, let's go into this a little bit. So I kind of wanted to bring this as well. So this is from the Low Country Digital History Initiative, I believe that those are
Okay.
the acronyms.
Sure.
So I wanted to kind of show the significance of the slave code in South Carolina, especially as you said, the Gullah people, you know, have, you know, are essentially Bajan. They were Bajan slaves who were
And
exported
Haitian
to
and
South Carolina.
yeah.
So, and as I said, you know, a lot of the practices that were developed in Barbados ended up in South Carolina in particular. So I wanted to kind of share that a little bit before we close the segment. But regardless, the development of a plantation economy and African slavery in Carolina began before English colonists and even settled Charlestown in 1870. In 1663, 8 Lord proprietors in England received land grants in North America from King Charles II for their loyalty to the monarchy during the English Civil War. The lords decided to combine their shares to establish a profit-seeking proprietary settlement, Carolina, between the English colony of Virginia and Spanish Florida. To ensure its financial success, they sent representatives to study the lucrative sugar plantation system on the Caribbean island of Barbados. They also recruited white settlers from this English West Indian colony to help launch their new North American settlement. These white Barbadians often brought enslaved African Caribbeans with them. So again, international enterprise.
Yeah.
Soon after, the original 8 Lord proprietors, one of whom, John Colton, was a Barbadian. Just a quick aside, I have a problem with calling him a Bajan.
Sure.
As a white settler.
Yeah.
Like
Barbadian.
But,
you know, it's like
right.
Puerto Rican versus now I'm gonna forget the word. So close.
I guess.
Yeah. So but yeah.
But anyway, I digress. Obtained charters for Carolina in 1663 and 1665, a group of Barbadians led by John Yeamans attempted to establish a settlement on the Cape Fear River, now North Carolina. The settlement did not last, but Yeamans later became one of the first governors of Carolina from 1672 to 1674. Even before Charlestown, the first successful English Carolina settlement was founded in 1870, the Lords drafted a fundamental constitution of Carolina in 1669 that encouraged African slavery based on the West Indian model, Barbados.
Yeah.
This institution granted every freeman absolute power and authority over his Negro slaves, which ensured West Indian planters they could continue using enslaved African labor when they immigrated to Carolina to establish plantations. The Lord proprietors also offered prospective Carolina settlers 20 acres of land during the first year of settlement for every black male they owned, and 10 acres for every black
Wait,
female.
what? Read that again. Proprietors also offered prospective
Carolina settlers 20 acres of land during the first year of settlement for every black male they owned, and 10 for every black female.
So you're a Barbadan, right? You have
white
a certain amount of slaves, right? They offer you, hey, come to the Carolinas. We'll give you land per slave you own, because that's the ability you have to work the land, right? This is your
work the land and make us money. Yes.
Okay.
Again,
and fucking throwing a couple mules along with it, I guess. You know.
Right.
Like.
Right.
Sure.
Various white Barbadians who had been small to medium-sized landowners on the island emigrated to Carolina in the first decades of settlement. Of course they would, because more land, more profit. Many families who became prominent planters and slave owners in Charleston, including the Middleton, Brayton, and Gibbs families, have Barbadian origins. These Anglo-Barbadian settlers brought colonial experience, the parish system, the Anglican Church, and plantation slavery to Carolina. In the 17th century, Barbados and the West Indies were also Carolina's chief source of enslaved labor. 1/3 to 1/2 of Carolina's early enslaved laborers at this time migrated from the English West Indies, particularly Barbados, rather than directly from Africa. In exchange for enslaved Africans, sugar, and other commodities, Carolina settlers shipped lumber, pipe staves, pitch, tar, resin, beef, pork, corn, peas, and enslaved American Indians to Barbados and other West Indian colonies such as Jamaica. This trade connection launched Carolina's early economy before the growth of rice culture and continued until the Revolutionary War severed U.S. ties with other English colonies. These early trade connections were so significant that historian Peter Wolf described Carolina as a colony of a colony to Barbados.
Okay. And this is similar to, like, I know in Jamaica, large Indian population, right? Like, as in
yes,
original Indian, not Native American Indian, where it's
indigenous,
like,
yes,
because British rule, you know, they're moving around their, you know, subjugated classes,
right.
You know.
But here you see how they're moving slaves around. So it's not like necessarily once a slave in one place, you stay in that place. No, you moved around where the need was. So, you know, so just like, again, global scope. In the name of capitalism, you're going to be moved, your equipment, basically. So where you needed is where they was going to send you, assuming that you would survive the trips between islands or the continental U.S. Anyway, many Black and white settlers only briefly spent time in Barbados before arriving in Carolina. Still, their experiences on the West Indian colony influenced Carolina's commercial priorities and legal systems. In 1691, Carolina leaders established a slave code modeled almost verbatim after laws passed by the Barbadian Assembly between 1661 and 1688. Though such laws in practice were often flexible or ignored in early colonial contexts, this code served to legally define enslaved Africans as chattel property in Carolina. There are the most draconian statutes for enforcing slavery in the North American colonies. Through ongoing trading relationships with the West Indies, white and Black Carolinas also shared information and ideas, including news about slave rebellions that occurred on various Caribbean islands throughout the 18th century. For whites in Carolina, this further encouraged fears about maintaining the safety of whites in a Black majority colony and led to increasingly strict and violent enforced laws for Africans and African Americans in Carolinas and beyond. You know what this sound like that they didn't say directly? The police state.
Sure. Well, this is like the starts of this, right?
Yeah, you know? This is the very roots of our current day police state. Again, out of fear, like, and again, it's out to, you know, African slaves revolting or the prospect of them revolting that they had to protect themselves. So very certain, again, not explicit here, but you can make the connection. This is why the police state came to be. So, for enslaved Africans in Carolina, news of rebellions and Black resistance inspired hope for freedom, as well as concerns about white retaliation. So I'm going to stop there for now. But, you know, but I think, again, slavery in the West, English invention, not American necessarily. And I think it's important for us to make that connection that, again, when it deals with capitalism, the West has its hands all over it, and it's not limited to just America. And again, you can make the connections with Gaza. it's a Western thing. It's not a strictly American thing.
Yeah.
But again, you could see a lot of the roots of where racism, the police state, racial inequality, a lot of this stuff kind of stems from a little island, essentially. That again, if you do not know your history, you would have thought that slavery was an American thing. And so I felt it was important to kind of share that, because again, I don't think people will talk about it in this way, but I think more especially like in the independent media space, especially when we talk about slavery, is always within the context of it being an American construct when it really wasn't. It was, if anything, it was imported. So, but I think again, this is another reason why we have to have a more global scope when we're looking at history and how these things connect to other places. Because if we don't, then um, again, we become singular in terms of our thinking and not necessarily believe or can make the connection that just because it happened in one place or might not have happened in one place doesn't mean it doesn't affect other places.
Yeah.
And I think especially in US history, especially the way they teach it here in this country, it doesn't necessarily do a good job of that. Maybe with the West, possibly, but definitely not in other regions, especially in the global South, where I think there's a lot more of a bigger impact that it had on the global South than you would think. So I think kind of looking at history in that context, and I think a lot of that deals with the idea, again, this is all based on capitalism, which is the fuel that essentially runs the West. So if you are going to make that connection, you're going to have a lot of students who are going to kind of reject capitalism, which is not good to the thing how things work here. So so I think obviously that's kind of why history is not talked about in this way. But I think that that's why we're here to kind of help you all make those connections. So shout out to my dad for the little history lesson that he gave me that I wanted to share with all y'all. So any thoughts before we close?
No, I think you nailed it. So capitalism causing all your issues.
I mean, at the end of the day, is
fucking class
at the end of the day,
and capitalism.
Yeah.
Fucking.
Right. So.
Well.
So I will say this now. So we're gonna have hopefully probably by next week, Dwayne Wong Omowale, who is a Pan-African writer and lawyer. So we're going to talk to him about the resistance that's happening in Togo. But I'm sure if I could figure out a way to kind of talk to him about some of this stuff in relation to this,
sure.
I think he would be a good kind of person to speak to. So, but again, I think, yeah, this is just making more of the case of why we need to be looking at the global South a little more closely in terms of what's happening there, because what's happening in the global South, and especially now, like there's a lot of stuff we've reported that's happening in the global South that the West is ignoring on purpose or people are ignorant to.
Yeah.
And that's by design, because God forbid that we in the West actually get some of those ideas, especially in terms of resistance. Can have that here. So, but yeah, talking about issues and stories like these are why we're demonetized. So, if you want to help us out and support us financially, you can scan the QR code you see on your screen. You could type in the Ko-fi link you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're in the YouTube chat, you can type in !donate, all one word. That link will pop up. The Ko-fi link, and you can donate as anything, as much as $1 will help us immensely. You can also give on Substack, PayPal, and Cash App. Links are in the description below if you want to give via those apps as well. And as we say, we thank you guys so much for supporting us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our content so maybe the algorithm might favor us a little bit. And make sure to leave a comment. Did you know that the Barbados slave trade was influential in creating, a lot of things, the isms that happened in the West, like racism, capital, like all those things that we kind of talk about, kind of stem from this little British colony, and was kind of exported out here. So let us know if you knew that or any thoughts about it. And help us get to free K. I think where we were at. I think
25.
we're over 2,500 now for sure.
Yeah.
So maybe, hopefully, I mean, I'm going to be very generous by the end of the year, but maybe even by fall, like October, can we hit free K? Perhaps, maybe.
Do it. Do it.
And thank you guys for watching.
So, to the chats, Boy Wonder.
Yeah, I think there were a few. So,
yeah.
I think I'm going to up right at the top.
I'm going to get the puppers. Puppers yelled at me.
Okay. All right. So, I'm going to read. Actually, I'm going to start kind of like at the beginning. So, kill your egregors. I still don't know what the F happened in Evangelion. Basically, everyone died. That's what happened in the end of Evangelion, at least the original series. Kill your Eggers again. Yay, Evangelion. What happened in the end, or is the end always forever ending? So weird. Should watch it sober. Actually, I would recommend not watch it sober. Even sober, it doesn't. You haven't seen Evangelion, have you, Reef?
No, sir.
No, we should watch it together.
Yeah.
Maybe as a special thing we can do with our friends, perhaps. Maybe.
Yeah. Which we should do some more. I need to look up some Soviet cartoons. There's some sci-fi ones that I wanted to pull together, and seeing as how those do incredibly well on our channel.
Yeah, fun fact, our African story clip is now our most watched clip on the entire network, surprisingly. Not sure how that happened, but it has stood the test. Like, we put that out 2 years ago, and that has stood the test of time. Like, it's now gone, like, it goes like in dormancy for a bit, and then it kind of pops off every once in a while. It popped off within the last month again. I think people in Russia are watching it now because we're getting Russian comments on
interesting enough.
So it's going international. So yeah, we definitely should do that. So Desert Mantis, what happens if you turn off that middle light switch, Collin?
The one behind you, because it's like
the one behind me.
Yeah.
You won't see me that well. Well, I have my light on, but that's a light that kind of goes over
overhead
my office area over here. Yeah.
Oh.
Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Sean, I come to INN for new news and information. That's why I truly appreciate you all. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, appreciate it, dog.
You. So Kamashuri, Kate, a surprise. Yeah, watch it to the end. Watch the end of the stream. Those of you who are here. Got a little surprise. Sean, now getting into the actual segment. It's capitalism as barbarity. Bardad as a root means ruined. Os as a suffix meaning full or having. Sick name to use. So I guess there's several. I don't think the actual meaning of Barbados is actually quite clear. I knew as the bit of ones given some of the trees that were seen. I forgot what kind of tree it is. I know there was also another etymology wise the name for the island. I forgot it off the top of my head. But yeah, I don't think it's quite clear how it actually got its name. But Sean, wow, this really makes you think. Thank you, Collin. So Cashmere Shore Kate, I guess I attended high school in the late 1960s.
60s.
Students and peers in my classes actually had parents who were born into slaveholders and lived as slaves. So yeah, kind of going with what you said, we think of slavery as something that happened in the distant past. It really didn't end till fairly recently, especially if you think of Jim Crow, which is kind of like in this country, which is essentially like
people still have dealt with that.
The next generation, like
the next generation. Fucking okay.
Or the evolved version of this, then sure.
Right.
So Kate, again, since I went to high school in Milwaukee, we did spend a lot of time talking about the proximity to slavery to our time. Yeah. CBD voter, did you visit Barbados recently? I have family in Barbados. I did. The last time I was there, 2022, summer 2022.
Yeah.
Summer
not that long ago.
No, so 3 years ago, I was there. So kill your Eggers. The sadistic nature of humanity boggles the mind. Yep, we're going to talk about that later. The Gaza. Chris H., who are Americans fundamentally?
Oh, there we go. Now he's back.
Yeah. We need to revisit this slave history for sure. Kate, I've never heard of the slave code. Right. And again, probably on purpose. Because God forbid that to know that how slavery acted in this country was based on a British invention that was essentially exported to you. You know, like, yeah, you got to think about slavery in a different way. But I think if you're going to think about it in terms of, if you're thinking about it from the capitalist standpoint, then it will make a lot of sense, which is why they don't teach it that way, because you don't want you to make those connections. Or at least say enough of it where you're not necessarily making those connections, especially how it ties to other countries. So Sean, I think we will find that this was done everywhere with every race. The Irish come to mind, India, people. The more I hear, the more it seems to be a thing of capitalism with extreme racism baked in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Chris H. also recommended talking about the slave castles on the coast of Africa, which we should probably look at some of that.
Yeah,
we have kind of touched on that, I think, before.
We have a bit.
But
that definitely, that actually is a good idea. We should look into. Definitely, that could be something we can talk to Omawali as well at some point, depending how this interview goes.
Sean, the Queen's jewels were purchased because of and mined by the subservient class, no different than today's employment. And then Chris H. says, the Indians in the Caribbean were indentured servants. They were brought to Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad, etc.
Yep.
He also says slavery was really started
my ancestry too.
By the Spanish and Portuguese. Britain and France got into the slavery game a bit later. So, whole Western Europe, all that stuff. Kitty asked if that's a Borderlands background. No, but I can see why you would think that. It is a bit cel-shaded. But he also says loving the pink and green. I also dig the neons. Chris H., I knew Barbados was one of the earliest locations they brought slaves, but not that Barbados influenced slavery in North America. Kameshwari Kate says, I hope the surprise is cake. Well, unfortunately, the cake is a lie. But anyway.
Not cake, but I think you'll like it.
Yeah, you'll
like it.
You'll enjoy that. All right. So on to our next one. So our UK viewers will probably already be aware of this, but our, the others of the group might not know. But soon they will. This is going to be you're going to see how things get internationally accepted very quickly, right? Just because there's not a global governance doesn't mean that it doesn't act like one. So this is about the nanny state internet. You may have read about, the UK's recent internet safety law. So we're going to get into a bit. This is Laura at Normal Island News, right? And this is going to be, just get your sarcasm hats on, right? This is going to be heavily sarcastic, but they write, UK government celebrates ruining entire internet for whole world to save 0 children from harm. The Online Safety Act came into effect 2 days ago and has been a roaring success, ruining the entire internet for everyone to save 0 children from harm. Western bureaucrats have hailed it as the most important step towards authoritarianism since the US agreed to ban TikTok for Israel. Excitingly, you can no longer decide what you see on the internet to protect a handful of kids whose parents did not bother with parental controls. Those kids are now so safe that they can access all the bad things by visiting sites that are too small to be affected by the rules. What matters is you can't access your preferred content without permission from an AI. Social media companies are even hiding your own posts from you until they can verify it's safe for you to see them. We can't be too careful, can we? The launch of the Online Safety Act has been so successful that it has impacted people who are not even British and don't even live in the UK. One German photographer was blocked from seeing their own photographs to protect children from seeing landscapes. Personally, I think it's brilliant the UK government introduced a policy their own voters don't want that has impacted people way beyond their jurisdiction. Remember a few years ago when GDPR was introduced, and everyone agreed you should not give more personal information to websites than is absolutely necessary. Well, now we've decided the opposite. Websites are demanding a copy of your ID or access to your email address book, which enables the government to obtain your entire digital footprint, including all the websites you signed up for, all the companies you've done business with, all the people you've interacted with, and all the OnlyFans girls you subscribe to. Perhaps the best part of the act is the facial scans, which are conducted by artificial intelligence to guess your age. The government actually wanted full body scans, but some do-gooders decided that might be too intrusive, so you have to get your face scanned instead. One woman was permanently banned from her own Discord server after it rejected her ID, and AI decided she looked too young to be 18. Yes, we are penalizing people for youthful looks now. Let's be honest, it's only what those...
they'll think of me.
Again, we are penalizing people for youthful looks, so Collin's going to be penalized. Let's be honest, it's only what those bastards deserve. Who do you think they are? Staying pretty while the rest of us get fat, gray, and wrinkly. I hate those bastards so much. Damn youthful fucking not Asian motherfuckers. So people in the UK are using Norman Reedus' highly detailed face from Death Stranding to get past newly... So the kids, Collin, the youths, they be figuring out ways to deal with this, right? And they're just using video game faces. Apparently that gets you around this. Yeah, I wanted to pull up because this is happening literally as we speak. Where is it at? Let's do this and this. So if you logged into your Spotify account recently, right? It's also doing this, right? If it'll load, hurry up, do the thing, do the stuff. You could do it. Internet, I believe in you. So look, age restricted content and checking your age. We partner with Yoti, a trusted digital identity company, to help us identify if users are eligible age to access some Spotify content and features like music videos that are labeled as 18 plus by rights holders. So this is happening to multiple places, right? But yeah, not good.
Including YouTube now.
I'll get to it. Yeah. So While the minority report World Labor has created its most brilliant, there have sadly been some unintended consequences. For example, Sir Keir Starmer was banned from social media after AI mistook his face for an anus and accused him of obscenity. Starmer's face has now been banned from the internet to the relief of the very worst people. Thankfully, Starmer is the only person who matters who has been unfairly impacted by the Online Safety Act. So, unquestionably, the most successful part of the act has been how it has blocked posts from Gaza for everyone who doesn't submit to mass surveillance. Brilliantly, many of these people are now using VPNs, unaware most are operated by Israel, so they're handing over their data either way. We are entering a brave new world where everyone who objects to genocide is monitored so that they can be marked for censorship, imprisonment, or execution. Those who opt out of the system can no longer object to genocide, and children can no longer see objections to genocide. This should negate the risk of them growing up developing a conscience. Aren't you glad your kids' minds are being controlled because you were too lazy to monitor their internet use? Mind control is essential for the safety of children everywhere. Apart from the children in Gaza, who cares about those? So, yeah. This is from Ricky Hale over at Council of State Media, who writes the Online Safety Act is not about protecting kids, right? It's about protecting war criminals, as we just alluded to. Been a day since the OSA came into effect, right? To protect the children, and political posts are being removed from social media left, right, and center. I had one post removed by Meta for nudity that contained no nudity. It simply mentioned the Pornhub situation and how adults are expected to show their passports or credit cards or have their faces scanned or even their email contacts scanned by porn and social media sites. And definitely look into who owns those sites. That might also behoove you. Artificial intelligence decided my political comment might contain nudity. It didn't, and it was removed. Other users are being told that social media posts are being hidden in their region for users who have not verified their age. On many sites, users are not given a way to verify their age and cannot access content they could access the day before. It's preposterous and very deliberate. This, of course, has nothing to do with protecting the children. Many of these censored posts are related to Gaza. So, due to local laws, we are temporarily restricting access. You'll be seeing that. The Online Safety Act is just the latest in a line of measures to censor people for political speech in the UK, and it might be the most draconian yet. Just imagine putting security cameras on every street corner that are monitored by AI. Imagine every time the AI flags inappropriate behavior, the person must be arrested and will then be jailed unless they can prove their innocence. Imagine every building you try to access demands your ID. Anyone could see that for what it is, authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is not an acceptable approach to child safety in the real world, so why would we accept it in the digital world? People do not want these measures, and they did not vote for them. So this is how things are being done, right? This is your email-based digital footprint age estimation, right? So you select verify by email, you put in your email address, sends you a link, users click the link, right? But here's what it does. It analyzes your financial institutions, your utility providers, and your public records, right, to estimate your age. Okay? So it looks at what's in your email and sees if you meet that requirement, right? So, and this is just one of the ways, right? The UK has a terrorism act that jails grannies for protesting against genocide and an online safety act that hides Gaza images until you sacrifice online privacy. Put simply, we're losing our freedoms day by day to protect genocidal Israel. The Online Safety Act places ludicrous demands on social media companies, such as taking harmful content down immediately. Ludicrously, companies are expected to remove content that is legal. Yet it is illegal to allow legal content on social media now. My head hurts too. The term harmful is so nebulous that an AI must judge if there is any possibility of harm and remove that post. As has already happened to me, this means we are no longer free to speak on the internet without permission from an AI. Websites are expected to share data on targeted ads and content moderation, meaning it's a matter of time until the mother of all data leaks happens, which that's already happening. Go look at what happened with the T app, right? Like, that's already a thing. I think Twitter also got, a bunch of IDs got leaked, right? So they are even required to scan your personal encrypted messages, meaning there is a legal requirement for them to spy on you. Under 18s are not allowed to use direct messages. Perhaps the most ludicrous aspect of the act is that the government rejected age verification at the device or browser level. While this would have still been intrusive, it would have been a one-time thing. Instead, they've decided you must verify your identity with every site that meets certain criteria, mostly the big sites. One stupid thing about this legislation is that smaller sites are not affected by the rules to the same extent, meaning this does little to protect children from accessing content. Instead, it stops adults from accessing that content unless they sacrifice their privacy. Who the hell is having their face scanned for porn or handling over credit card details to Wikipedia? All this means is that smaller sites will get a boost in popularity and bigger sites could face ruin. However, some of the smallest sites say they will also be forced to close. It looks like one of the least controversial mid-sized companies are safe here. I'm sure this is all part of the plan. It's worth noting these measures are not just impacting the UK. Some EU countries are trialing them along with some US states. Countries like Australia and Canada are introducing similar measures soon. Mark my words, this won't stop at age verification. They will continue finding new measures for censorship and control. Next step will likely be digital IDs. The era of the free internet is over. So, any thoughts before I get to our last little bit of this?
I mean, I know you. Well, I'll say this. I watched the Crystal Ball interview that she did with I forgot that senator's name right now, but they mentioned, the senator mentioned that Israel is an ally because we share. Now she's CIA. She's a former CIA agent. Well, she says former CIA, but I believe
no such thing.
CIA, always CIA,
Yeah.
or whatever. But she mentioned, like, Crystal pressed her in terms of, why are we allies with Israel when they're clearly committing war crimes? And the senator's excuse was, Alyssa Schlosskin said, they're our allies because we share information with them, essentially.
Right.
So, but the thing is, it's kind of like a double. But here's the issue with this: it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because the information that they share can be, I think, mostly used to incriminate, or can be used to incriminate us.
Sure.
But depending on the situation, it can be used to incriminate the ones in power. So, look at, the Epstein case, even reports of Clinton basically being blackmailed by Israel on account of his relationship with Monica Lewinsky, like, back in the day. Like, people weren't necessarily talking about that, but, like, that's a thing. And I think Bibi kind of threatened Clinton with that, apparently, or something of that sort.
Yeah.
So, so I think just all of this, just kind of thinking in terms of Israel, is just like, I mean, we'll probably get into more of that later, especially with our last two stories tonight. But, ally, that we call Israel our ally, but yet it just kind of harkens to me like an abusive relationship. Like,
yeah.
You know, like we pretend like they help us when they're doing all that they can to essentially hurt us, and we're just kind of sitting there and taking it because, you know, they essentially have information where they can blackmail us, and this is including our political leaders. So I think it says something that shows the depravity of our political leaders, that Israel has shit over their heads that they can use at any time to basically be like, do our bidding or we will expose you type thing. And again, and I'm speculating here, like I want to make that clear, but I don't think I'm too far off the mark of this, given what we've seen and heard, you know, especially within the last year, considering Israel's actions and kind of what we've reported here. But all of this stuff is mostly for us in terms of keeping, again, control. Like saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, especially like, and it doesn't have to be about Israel. It could be just about anything that our politicians or the powers that be don't particularly like, that they can arrest us at any time. They could charge us. They could do anything that they want, and we have no means to stop it. So it is essentially like Big Brother syndrome, like in terms of watching our move, like everything are being monitored. So because again, they don't want any dissent. They do not want any form of resistance or any form of like any form of people rising up to go after the establishment. So their thing is, oh, we have to protect ourselves so that we can get to the populace first before they get to us. So that's all that this is kind of reminds me of. And it's very
dystopian.
You know, just again, but it's dystopian, but again, it just gives Israel like like just that undertone in terms of what they're doing to us, and especially how they have our politicians in a chokehold.
So you mentioned YouTube, right? And you're not wrong. So this is from Disclose TV. They say YouTube will begin using AI to monitor user behavior and psychology to determine whether viewers in the US are over or under the age of 18, right? So,
and I'm only asked YouTube because I think I saw something in relation to this today.
Yes,
on YouTube.
So,
I think it was YouTube.
Here's how it works. This is from YouTube, right? They say we will use AI to interpret a variety of signals that help us determine whether a user is over or under 18. These signals include the types of videos a user is searching for, the categories of videos they have watched, or the longevity of the account. When the system identifies a teen user, will automatically apply our age-appropriate experiences and protections, including, but not limited to, disabling personalized advertising, turning on digital well-being tools, whatever the fuck those are, and adding safeguards to recommendations, including limiting repetitive views of some type of content. Right? You've watched this too much, 18-year-old. Fucking if the system incorrectly estimates a user to be under 18, they will have the option to verify they are 18 or over, such as using a credit card or government ID. We will only allow users who have been inferred or verified as over 18 to view age-restricted content that may be inappropriate for younger viewers. Yeah, whatever the fuck that means.
Well, I mean, for us, like we say this, you know, like pretty much all of our content is not meant for kids, and we've declared that as such on YouTube. But all the same, I don't think it's going to matter much because they can use us as an example, like as an excuse, just given what we cover, like to restrict us. Even like our channel is already restricted, so
which, like to some degree, I'm like, if you probably shouldn't be watching if you're, not an adult anyway. So like,
right.
Hopefully advertisers see this as an opportunity. Now you get to advertise adult content on the adult content, but whatever.
Yeah, but we don't. But we don't produce popular stuff though. So
well, but anyway, this is from Kit Knightley over at Off Guardian, right? Who writes why the UK's age verification system probably won't work. The latest attempt to control the internet is just more evidence the powers that be never really understood it, right? So on Friday, the age verification clause of the OSA officially came into force. People have been Googling VPN a lot. That's a good thing. We'll get to why later. Unfortunately, much of this is stable doors and bolted horses. We've been warning about the OSA since it was first mooted by the conservatives, just to remind you that sides are an illusion, and we're rather past the point where awareness would have mattered. The new law essentially forces companies to put any, even potentially adult content behind an ID wall, meaning a user must prove their age before they access it. The ways of doing that vary. You can use credit card, let an AI-powered system scan your face via webcam to guess your age. Don't worry, it won't store the data. It's only guessing your age, not scanning your face and uploading it to some data storage center. They promised they wouldn't do that, except they already fucking have and already been leaked before. So the really vital part here is what exactly adult content means. It evokes and is indeed intended to evoke pornography. You know it when you see it, though, don't you? The act was sold as a tool to prevent children from accessing the near infinite amounts of porn scattered across the web, but pornography is the least of it. Adult content can also mean violence, suicide, animal cruelty, war, drugs, or any news coverage and or discussion of the same. It could also mean conspiracy theories, especially those which would expose children to harm, like anti-vaccine sentiment or cause radicalization, quote unquote. In fact, it can potentially mean anything it is required to mean, which is exactly the kind of thing they love to put in new laws. Just sweeping legislation is their favorite. So today, Kit wants to talk about how the OSA is going to spread, why it might not matter if it does. Over the weekend, it was widely noted on Twitter that Elon Musk's platform was putting EU-based users behind the age restriction, not just British ones. People made jokes that the US-based platform couldn't differentiate between the UK and Europe. Far more likely, they are preparing for when the EU launches its own verification scheme in the near future. Right? In our earlier story, Collin talked about how a lot of this British-European law gets spread around, right? So, same here. Australia, as they so often do, started this totalitarian ball rolling back in the spring. Ireland followed suit earlier this month. Canada and Mexico aren't far behind, and the US's Kids Online Safety Act is moving forward more slowly, but only the most optimistic would bet against it passing eventually. The trend is as predictable as it was inevitable. And keep in mind, states like Texas and Florida and other places have already enacted this, right? So we must ask yet again, what is the functional difference between a one world government and 197 near identical national governments? The answer is as close to nothing as makes no difference. So again, there was this YouTube thing just to keep you, that happens over here too. It's coming. That is the current model for global rule. 100 Hydra heads pretending the body they're all attached to doesn't exist. And this Hydra really, really wants to control the internet. The good news, at least in my opinion, is that I don't think they can. I don't think it'll work. Well, in one way it will. It will normalize people handing over IDs and asking permission. It will further accustom people to the idea that the government is looking over their shoulder and further ingrain all the habits of self-moderation and internal censorship that dictates. There's nothing you can do about that. Expect to nudge people and remind them this is not normal. Whatever the counter of normalization is, anti-normalization, weirding, but that's only half of it. The psychosocial half, the other half, actually controlling the internet, I don't think they're capable of achieving. I'm not even sure it's possible. I don't believe the internet is capable of being controlled in the way they are seeking to control it. I don't think the establishment knew for 1 second what they were unleashing when they made access to it so widely available, and I don't think they would have birthed this monster if they had known. And I think they've been playing catch-up ever since. This lack of understanding of the internet is displayed in comical and trivial terms fairly routinely. Consider the viral video of a CNN anchor asking, "Who is this 4chan?" Or David Cameron's solemn pledge to ban encryption, which is almost impossible. They just don't get it, Care Bear. They don't get it. Let's take these age verification measures as an example. We already mentioned that people are using VPNs to get around them. The talk of the government banning VPNs in response, unlikely, or making them register with the government, more likely, but that typifies the failings of imagination and approach that make it so unlikely they could ever fully succeed. They are always reacting, plugging leaks and whacking moles. They lag behind. People still torrent. Pirate Bay was shut down 50,000 times. It's still there. If one day it isn't, something else will be. There will likely be a dozen ways to circumvent the age verification system within a few weeks of it being implemented. Will only slightly slower than 17-year-olds realizing they can just click the I'm over 18 button. The internet evolves. It is dynamic and organic. When one route is blocked, informal armies of thousands of anonymous intelligences cloud compute workarounds. I'm not saying everything is fine. I'm not doing the negative panic meme. At least I don't think I am. The OSA and all the other acts like it are terrible. They enable censorship and demand surveillance. They make the environment more hostile, but not unlivable. While they are clearly a threat, I just can't see them as an existential one. I might be wrong. I might just be in a good mood and seeing ice cream castles in the air. For now, I download Tor while you can, and then whatever replaces Tor should it get banned or bought or compromised. That's just the way the internet works, and fortunately for us, this is something the powers that be have never really understood. So, closing thoughts, Care Bear.
It just kind of reminds me like when Facebook was in vogue.
Yeah.
And technically you had to be 18 and over to have it, but I knew children as young as 10. This was what? Like
20
like over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like 2010. Like this, so this was well over a decade ago, like 15 years ago now. Damn, that long ago. Like like nothing was done then, like to prevent like children using Facebook. So I definitely do agree. That I think in a lot of ways that I think our governments are playing catch up to tech, because I think that's kind of the result of having like old fossils who can barely use the internet on their phones, much less being able to legislate policy that kind of controls all of that. But I'm, with Kit Knightley here, maybe he's optimistic, probably, but
yeah,
I do believe, again, with Israel kind of being in the fray, like, I do believe that anything that our government leaders want to do and do quickly, especially if it's a means to kind of keep us in a chokehold, but in the guise of we must protect the children,
right?
Especially given our who's in office right now, it will be done quickly.
Yeah.
It won't be good, but it will be done quickly. So But yeah, I do. Will people circumvent it? Of course, people always do. I think the question is how they're going to circumvent.
Meanwhile, you
but
can still watch Love Island and Big Brother Tuesday night at 9. Fucking, you'll be all right, you know. So,
right. Yeah, but I think again, it's the idea of censorship. I think really at the core of this, it's just so stupid. Like,
yeah,
you know, like again, censorship, especially if you're thinking of kids, it's so like it makes no sense to me. You know, like um like I'm thinking of this one example because I saw this on YouTube like some time ago. So you know Kids Bop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, you know, like so you know the song Lady Gaga Born This Way, right?
Yeah.
So so surprisingly, Kids Bop did a cover for that song, but I think the line that they changed, or I think they just admitted, was "Don't be a drag, just be a queen" or whatever. They, I think, either cut that line or changed that line, right?
Yeah.
Because I guess apparently in that for them, like acknowledging that you're gay or whatever is too much for little kids.
Yeah.
But I think on another record where they had like Beyonce's Single Ladies, they had the whole song in full. Like that song is about what? Getting married or whatever. Like if you don't like it, like, so it's okay to, you know, like not have children talk about gay stuff, you know, but it's okay for young children to talk about marriage. Like again, that's just kind of like,
yeah,
it's so selective. And like, but if we're talking about free speech, but yes, it's partly due to free speech, but I think also mostly it should be, and again, like in all these articles that kind of mention this, where are the fucking parents? Like the parents should be monitoring this stuff. The parents should be talking to their kids about this stuff. And like, it's not like the children are not going to see it eventually. So not to say they should see everything like right away, but at least give them
some understanding
the
and
idea
heads up
of what is out there that is appropriate for them to know. And then as they get older, introduce more things. Like I think, and I think this is the danger of conservatism, is that I think, well, not even conservatism, but I think just generally, like we try to shield our kids for so much stuff that you essentially are like, I think is, I get it. Like there's so much stuff in the world now, especially given the social media. There's a lot more access to things that children are able to see at a younger age. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing your job as a parent or someone who might be, you know, who have children in your life to help them kind of monitor that, you know, and at least have them have that understanding, you know, what kind of children, what kind of adults are they going to grow up to be, you know? So I feel like it's kind of taking away a lot of the responsibility from what parents should be doing. And it's not to say that, like parents should be overly, like there should be some control over to what children are seeing. But look, look, certain movies, like even as a child, well, again, different time. Certain movies like that I watched, like when I was younger, if it was now, probably would not watch them as a child. But the difference was, in many cases, I was watching it with my parents,
right,
or with an adult. Certain movies I wasn't watching by myself until I was older. So, but I know children who are watching like certain movies, like maybe even like Harry Potter, and which I would argue may not necessarily be fairly tame, but like there's certain movies definitely I would not watch kids watch when they're like 6 that they already have seen. because Netflix makes it so easy. Like they just push a button and they can watch whatever.
Yeah, let me turn on Candyman, you know?
Right. Exactly.
So,
like I remember vividly, my mom told me, like when what's that doll? Chucky.
yeah.
I think when the first Chucky movie came out. Like my mom told me, don't watch Chucky. Because it's scary, whatever. I think it had to be about 5 or 6. My older brother let me watch it with him.
I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end.
Right. And of course I got scared of it. Of course I had nightmares over it, you know, but like instead of yelling at my brother for allowing me to watch it, my mom yelled at me because she was like, I told you not to watch that.
Not to watch it, right.
You know.
Look away.
But again, like, right. But I feel like now, like, the children are actively saying, oh, I watched this. I'm like, how? So, again, I think just a different time with just how easy it is to have these kind of access. Like, I think families are kind of more, even not aware or more nonchalant. When I think, if anything, now in this day and age, you have to be way more careful. But that should be on the parent. All this to say, that should be on the parents to make that, help children make those decisions and talk about these things appropriately as they need to.
Yeah.
Like that shouldn't be the government's job necessarily to, again, do it in the guise of protecting the children, when no, it's just really a way just to monitor our actions and punish us for it, for things that really should be none of your damn business.
I'm ready for more tyranny and censorship. That's what I'm preparing myself for.
Sure.
You know?
Tyranny requires constant effort.
Constant effort. All right. Well, talking about these things is certainly why YouTube's demonetized us, and you'll probably have to put your ID in to, you know, watch us anyway. So while you're there, you might as well go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network and send us over a couple of dollary dues. Help keep the lights on over here. You can scan that QR code, or links are always in the description below. But we get it. Times are tough. Money's tight. Just like and subscribe. Do all the algorithm stuff. Share the video. Leave a comment. You know, what censorship are you worried about coming next? Otherwise, thanks for watching. Yeah, we did it. We did it.
Yeah.
All right. 2 of the chats.
Actually, there are a couple of I think people were really into that segment, and I think there are a couple of good points. I just want to try and find them.
Yeah.
So probably about here. Okay. So Sean, let's see. I might need to go far back, but Sean said, Nihilo, supposedly our faces were scanned at birth all the way back to 1978. Let's see. I think there were a couple I saw.
Well, and facial recognition is becoming more of a thing in multiple avenues. So,
right. Nihilo Nostrum, my kids often don't have anything to talk about other than what they watch on YouTube. They clearly spend too much time on their tablets. Well, I just thought, well, kind of not maybe in relation, but I just kind of had this thought, you know, just how, you know, this administration has essentially, you know, defunded public
PBS
access television.
Yeah.
So like Sesame Street, all that stuff that were very much kid friendly.
Yeah, is that one HBO, you know, or whatever, right? You got to pay extra for Sesame
but you have
Street.
to pay, right? But you have to pay for that. So,
yep.
You know, the thing was with public access, that was free.
Well, now
you know, so
NPR is brought to
now
you by
you have to pay.
Fucking Capital One, all that shit, everything's
right.
Yep.
Which I'm sure in a lot of ways, I can't help but think that's probably part of the issue, is that, which our government leaders are not necessarily saying, they want that in the pocket of these, of like Netflix, or that will want you to pay in order for your child to watch something. Like, and it's not even that good, I would argue.
Yeah,
so
Neil Nostrum says, exactly, Sean, too much clicking on what's put in front of them. Not enough knowing what to look for. If all the good shows weren't paywalled, they'd watch normal kid cartoons. And I'd argue there's still great kid content on there, educational, whatever. It's just, it's somewhat more difficult to find, for sure.
Right, but even like Looney Tunes that I watched religiously, as a child, I'm sure many of you did. Now is considered problematic now due to some of the
well,
content.
for sure, it definitely is.
So so
I was
really
watching somebody
that's unfortunate.
That was like, it's not really, they talk about, we're addicted to content and all that stuff. That's not what your brain is looking for. It's looking for like engagement and like information,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's not being given. The algorithms are not encouraging that in any capacity, so, but yeah, it's just wild. A lot of people saying we're fucked. Orca said, yeah, YouTube was requiring ID in August. Yep.
Yeah.
So
That's what I saw today.
Yep. Looks like I'll be at inin.com or IndieNewsNow.com. That would be correct. You can also find us on Substack and Rumble. Links in the doobly-doo.
Right. We're prepared just in case.
Yeah.
YouTube fucks us over even more.
John said, ignorance is never the answer. Explanation is. Yep. It's basically lobotomizing them by hiding the truth until after their brain has stopped developing mostly. So waiting for the neuroplasticity to become weak. Yeah, to make sure that, you're not going to know how to interpret that information. Yeah, nobody wants to be a helicopter parent, that kind of thing. Sure.
Well, here's the thing. No one's saying you need to be a helicopter parent.
Be involved.
I'm not saying that.
In that.
Just be present. Just be present with your child's what they watch, and like talk to them about it, and like explain certain things that might not make sense to them. Like, obviously, like there's a way you can do that without being like, because the idea of helicopter parenting to me is kind of synonymous with, I have to watch my kid in case they get into trouble, or if they do something, like it almost gives like a negative connotation. Like, it's not that. It's the idea of like, and I argue if you're kind of feel like if you're helicoptering them, like I will always kind of say that's kind of a reflection on you. Like, what are you not doing with your child that you feel like you haven't said anything to them, or you're not doing something with them that you think that either they're going to hurt themselves, or, they're going to do something that they're not supposed to do. So, like, so I really think it's just the idea of engaging in them in that way. If there's something inappropriate, explain why it's inappropriate. Like, don't. I think that like kind of the thing that we do is, oh, you can't watch that, or you're too young for this, or whatever. Which, not to say that's not necessarily wrong, but give the explanation as to why.
How long before you have to ID yourself to be over 18 to watch Miss Rachel? That's going to be a thing. So,
but
anyway,
like I think I was very fortunate for the most part, like, and it's not to say that my family really watched it, especially when I was older, like watched what I was watching alone. But I think back then, at that time, this was in the late 80s.
Yeah,
there was one TV in the house. Like,
when your parents were at work,
you didn't have the ability to watch stuff on your phone, or like everything was still kind of analog. TV was just in one room in the house, maybe two. You're watching shit together as a family. Like, so, or if it's like with kids, it was usually around children's programming, usually, or very appropriate things that we were able to watch that were a little bit more adult. Like, I wasn't necessarily watching TV just by my lonesome and watching, like, you know, porn or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that came much later. But, like, but by then I was an adult.
I grew up.
That's what I mean. It's just like,
where it's like that technology was really advancing along with myself, right? Where, like, you know, we went from, one TV in the house to, oh, you have a TV in your room. Oh, you have a computer in your room. Right. You have a cell phone.
Right.
Like, you really learn to monitor that yourself, and it was very latchkey stuff, right? Where it's like, your parents don't have time. They're doing other stuff, but
right.
I definitely think what
then
the good stuff I see now.
Then it was kind of like, right. Yeah, exactly your point. Because that was almost kind of back then, like a rite of passage. Like, I didn't get my own TV in my own room until I was 13. And even then I didn't have cable. Like, I just had the basic channels.
The SpongeBob with the VHS.
As well as my own phone in my room.
Built in.
And then eventually, as you said, computer in my room. And like all that kind of stuff. Like, you're having all that exposure by the time you're 2.
2. Yeah.
Like,
right on the tablet.
Because you have everything on your damn phone. So, I think that's the difference.
Is parents who like engage on those platforms to their kids, they're pulling up stuff on YouTube for them to watch and showing them how to like find things for that, and that I see as being like the best way to deal with a lot of that,
Sure.
So, plus, a lot of us 90s kids got traumatized by our friends, and we decided, oh, there's places on the internet we probably shouldn't go, like if we don't want that.
Well, but but I mean, I argue, but that's kind of like the human, like in the West, like there's always going to be things like among your friends, like at least back in my day, it was like, oh, certain movies that we weren't allowed to watch, but we would try and sneak in.
Yeah.
Or, back then, like you had, I'll say porno, like, but it wasn't like necessarily on the TV like that.
Yeah.
Like, you had porno magazines and you knew somebody who knew somebody.
Someone found it in the woods.
That you were able just to sneak out. So
that's where that
always
shit
going to
is.
be something like that. There's always going to be some type of, but I think again, it's still the idea of like, it's bad and like you shouldn't see it. Like, and that's the thing. It makes it enticing. Like, why is it so bad? What is about it that people are not allowing me? And I'm not saying for certain things, like show them, but give the explanation. I think Kill Your Eggers said in the chat, I always demanded an explanation even as a kid. Yeah, like explain to the kids rather than like, no, don't do that. Don't do this. Like give the explanation and show, well, not necessarily show them depending on what it is, but at the appropriate time, in the same way that I had my own TV in my room at the appropriate time, or certain things as I get older. I think we've kind of lost that in our culture. Like, I know young children who have TVs in their rooms, which I'm totally against, by the time they're 5. And I always say to families, you want your child to sleep, remove the TV. They shouldn't be watching TV late at night where it's so stimulating that they can't go to sleep until 3 o'clock in the morning. And then like they come to me in class tired as all hell. Like, that makes no sense to me. Like, these are the kind of things that you have control over as a parent. So, but I think right now, I think it's just kind of tech is just so accessible to everybody now that we've kind of gone the ways side of just having it without thinking of the implications of that. And I think in that regard, that I could see that as a problem. But again, that should be on the parents to make that decision, not the government. So I feel like the government in some ways is overcompensating for the job that should be naturally be done to the family, and having them kind of dictate what they should or should not allow their children to see until, depending on their age. But yeah, I think we've just kind of lost that in our culture currently.
Yeah.
And now, and I think it's just as the articles are saying, we kind of have to, the government is doing our job to kind of backtrack all of that. When again, that should be to the community and the families within that to make those choices.
Yeah. All right. You ready for our next one?
Yep. So as we said earlier, these next two are related to, they're basically the same thing, but just talked about from different perspectives. So, as I said earlier tonight, it's, I mean, I think the biggest thing like in mainstream media now is that now, because Gaza is at stage 5 starvation, now it's kind of like, oh, we're in crisis mode, so we must do something to help the children in Gaza. And like, so now, and I think even now it's gotten to the point where even politicians who've been staunchly pro-Israel are now kind of backtracking somewhat and like, oh, we have to do something now, which again, I feel like it's somewhat related to Trump, or easier to kind of do under Trump, or when it was Biden,
content
like,
creators too.
like, right, exactly. So, whereas, and again, I have to give you your flowers again, Reef, like, and I say this because, but then again, I've said this on the show many times, it just got, for me, very, it got a little much for me to kind of talk about Israel and Gaza pretty much every week. But like,
all your flowers
you kind of maintain, but you kind of maintain the stance of we need to talk about this, but you kind of brought in the humanistic side of what is happening that I think our audience, one, appreciates, but number two, a lot of the stuff that the mainstream media is talking about now, we already kind of talked about already, or at least our fam was able to make the gaps, like more readily due to, we talked about food and how food is important, in a culture, and like the lack of food and but like we humanized it a little more. And I think, thanks to the Palestinian writers who you were able to pull to kind of bring more of that out, rather than the very almost robotic, mechanical way that mainstream media is talking about these issues now. Like,
it's a humanitarian
whereas I
crisis.
feel like you did, right. But I think you humanized it a lot more in talking about they have names, they have stories, they have experiences related to family and culture, and that is being lost right now. That gives it a little bit more of a personal view. And I think that, again, that's kind of what is missing in mainstream media right now, is that you're talking to all these people who have no access to Gaza, who can't, you can speak about it, but you can't necessarily personalize it because, one, no one is getting in, but two, they're not necessarily Palestinian. That's still what is not missing even in mainstream media right now. It's like, whereas you've been able, mostly you, to bring Palestinian voices to this whole thing that gives their perspective of what's going on. So yeah, again, I really appreciate you for really kind of sticking to that and really making sure our audience, is aware of that. So I kind of want to kind of continue in that vein with this story, because obviously this has been a trending topic right now, but I didn't want to talk from, how mainstream media is talking about it. I wanted to follow your lead and talk about it from the Palestinian standpoint. And I found the story late last night as I was prepping. So move up. So I got this from the Israel-Palestine News. So this was written by Tawa Ahmed Al-Wawi. This was reposted from the Middle East Eye, and I believe she's 19 and a university student. So she, I think, wrote this op-ed for the Middle East Eye. So she wrote, I guess, I actually don't know if it's male or female, but given the name. But they write, hunger is killing us in Gaza, but it is world leaders who should be dying of shame. I take my final exams on an empty stomach with a fogged mind and a weakened body as prices skyrocket and Gaza is starved to death while the world watches in silence. So obviously we talk, at least right now in mainstream media, talking about the babies and children, which is all true, you know, but I think it's also just as valid to hear from a young adult standpoint of, which I'll get more into it later, but kind of giving the connotation of, oh, we must help the children, as if, you know, you're minimizing everyone else who needs food as well. So that's kind of my, I'll get into that later, but anyway, Tawa writes, I never thought I would say the words "I'm hungry" out loud. Now I say them every day. For most of my life, I barely cared about food. I often skipped meals and sometimes lost my appetite entirely, especially during exam period. At home, I was used to being scolded for not eating properly. My friends at school teased me that I ran on solar energy. But nothing I experienced, no amount of missed meals, could have prepared me for this. This isn't a loss of appetite. This isn't a phase. This is starvation in Gaza, an Israeli-imposed famine. It swallows every thought and strips your body down to survival. There's no comfort, no strength, no focus, only the sharp, unrelenting ache of hunger. And it is not accidental. It's engineered by a genocidal government that wants to punish us. Today, we are starving, and the world is watching. The worst part? It's not just physical. Hunger has taken over our minds. It's all we think about. Not our studies, not our futures, just food. How to find it, how to pay for it, how to survive. On Friday, 18th of July, this was the cost of basic food items in Gaza. So again, these are just things that you would have in your pantry or things that you can allegedly easily get.
Right.
So a kilogram of flour, 200 shekels, which equates to $60.
Yeah.
Kilogram of sugar, 400 shekels, $120. That's about what? Like half a pound.
Yeah.
Just to give some context.
Little
About half a pound, like
yeah,
a
something
little
like that.
over half a pound. Yeah, like $120 for a half pound of sugar. Kilogram of pasta, $30. Kilogram of rice, $45.
2 pounds.
Kilogram of potatoes, 2 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not a lot. Like,
yeah, less than a 5 pound bag.
Lentils. Right. 26. Kilogram of tomatoes or aubergines, which are eggplant.
Eggplant.
$24. These are not prices, these are punishments. And even if you manage to collect enough money, there's another problem: the currency itself.
Which we've talked about.
Shopkeepers reject old bills, torn bills, and even slightly dirty ones. And if they do accept them, they charge a 45% commission. Imagine having no money and then being punished for the little you do. The price of flour jumps from 70 to 200 shekels overnight. Everything is volatile, as if basic food has become a commodity on the stock market where survival is traded by the hour. 4 of you can search 5 different markets and still come back empty-handed. And if you're lucky enough to find food, it's rarely enough to satisfy a single stomach. Cooking what little food we have is no longer a comfort. We ignite fires with whatever we can find: wood, plastic, scraps of cloth. The smoke chokes our lungs, stings our eyes, and clings to our skin like a heavy blanket. It brings coughing fits, worsens asthma, and steals breath from the cold and weak. Standing by the flame drains what little strength we have left. Hands tremble as they stir the pot. We do not eat because we want to, but because hunger is a war we fight every day. New figures are announced each day, and every one of them represents a real child, a real death. On the 22nd of July, at least 15 Palestinians, 4 of them children, starved to death in a single day, bringing the total starvation-related deaths since October 7th to 101, including 80 children. According to UNICEF, more than 6,000 children were hospitalized in June alone for acute malnutrition. An estimated 930,000 children are now facing catastrophic hunger, while 650,000 children under the age of 5 are at the risk of dying. According to the Gaza Ministry of Health, 115 people have died from hunger and malnutrition in the Strip, including 81 children. Yet the cold watches, cold and silent. As a message circulating in Gaza declared to the Arab and Islamic world, you are our adversaries before God. You are the adversaries of every child, every orphan, every widow, every displaced and starving person. Your silence empowered this genocide. We hold you accountable for this bleeding. Where are you, world? Where are your hearts? Where is your shame? Those in power sleep in peace. Their children eat and laugh. Ours cry ourselves to sleep begging for food, and sometimes they don't wake up. I talk to my friends about what we'll eat today. I don't mean the way people typically plan meals. I mean it literally. What can we eat today becomes a haunting question. Most of us survive on one meal a day, if you can call it a meal. Some drink only water, and even that isn't clean, which Vanessa's talked about. Shout out to her. But it's all we have. At this point, nobody cares if it's clean or not. Hungry breaks all standards. Even worse, some merchants are hoarding food. I'm not afraid to say this out loud because we're all angry. These few traders don't represent the people of Gaza. Simply put, they are not the body. They are the sickness feeding off of it. We are trapped in a cycle of pain and hunger. Our emotions have frozen. Loved ones die, and we don't even get the chance to say goodbye. We just keep moving, numb and hungry. My friend Hala told me a heartbreaking story. Her married sister lost her husband in an airstrike. She has young children. She cries every day, not because she misses her husband, but because she has nothing to feed her kid. These are not dramatic exaggerations. These is our reality. And there are even worse stories, so dark that words cannot describe them. From the window of her room, my best friend Aya watches the scene unfold. The soup kitchen, now named after its founder, Abu Shafia, who was just killed just weeks ago, sits behind the Star Stadium. Once a place for games, it is now a landmark for survival. Before sunrise, people begin to gather. They wait in silence, in dust, in hunger, clutching empty pots, as if the act of waiting might summon food. 16 massive pots boil lentils, yellow or brown, or thin soup bulked with whatever scraps are left. There's no salt, no spice, no real flavor. It doesn't matter. If they don't eat from the soup kitchen, they don't eat at all. Each person receives one ladle, just one. It can't fill a single stomach, let alone feed a family of 10. Children, elders, mothers, even young men, they all press forward. The crowd surges. Bodies crush together. Boiling lentils spill on bare arms. People don't flinch. Pain is second to hunger. There's no line, no order. Just need, just survival. Children barely 10 years old stand at the front, responsible for bringing back something, anything, for their families. And still, the pots run out before the line does. Aya saw people collapsing in the street from hunger, falling to the ground as their depleted bodies gave up. She saw a mother crying, holding her son, not because he was wounded, but because he looked at her with teary eyes and whispered, "Mama, I want to eat." And she had nothing, not even a crust of bread. In Gaza, children cry not from broken toys, but from hunger. One child died in his sleep, not from a bomb, not from bullets, but from starvation. Hunger killed him. Silence buried him. Where are you, Arabs? Where are you, humans? Why is the world deaf and blind to Gaza? Why has bread become a fantasy and water a dream? Gaza does not need pity. Gaza needs action. Gaza needs voices. Gaza needs the silence to be shattered. That little boy died hungry, but it's the world leaders who should be dying of shame. As a university student, I try to distract myself with my studies. I write articles like this one to survive mentally. I take my final exams online, studying English literature at the Islamic University of Gaza, the same university that Israel destroyed. I sit for my exams on an empty stomach, with a fogged mind and a weakened body. My fingers shake as I try to write answers that make sense. The questions blur before my dry eyes. Hunger steals my focus, crushes my thoughts, and drains my energy. I can't sit upright, and I can barely breathe. The drones buzzing and the roar of warplanes haunt my sleepless nights. Exhaustion weighs me down, but I push through. Failure is not an option, even if my body feels like giving up. We are not starving by accident. We're being starved by design. This is not a natural disaster, but a deliberate man-made catastrophe, a starvation genocide. Can you not see it? Can you not hear it? Children with swollen bellies, mothers fainting in food lines, grandparents wasting away. Do you have eyes to see, ears to hear? Then name it for what it is. But we will not forgive, and we will not forget.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
And I just have a couple of thoughts, but honestly, I don't even want to say them because it's YouTube and it's the internet, and people can easily look. I don't want to be called a hater, because I'm not, and I'm not going to get into specifics, but you guys can fill in the blanks. There's certain people who are trying, and I want to be fair, within their position, it's probably the most that they can do. But at the same time, I also feel that certain people with the positions that they have are using this opportunity not necessarily for the right reasons. And I feel in their actions, while it might seem noble, it's kind of minimizing the need in certain ways. And this, as Tawa said, this is a catastrophe. I won't even call it an emergency. Whatever is the next step up for an emergency, this is what this is right now. And, going back to, look, the thing is, again, I watched the Breaking Points interview that Crystal did with Senator Slotkin, and people are praising Crystal for, the interview. And the thing is, I understand why people are praising her.
Bare minimum positions do not deserve praise. Thank you.
Well, I'll
That's
say
my
this.
TED Talk.
Well, I'll say this. Crystal, like all of us, are not in the position that a lot of our politicians have to actually take action against Israel. So in that context, but I tweeted this out today, there is no point in talking to these politicians thinking that they have a conscience and thinking that your words or you can appeal to their humanity. And Kwame Ture said it best. In order for nonviolence to work, your opposition must have a conscience. Our government has proven for the last few decades, especially with this issue, but definitely within the last couple of years and change, they have no conscience regarding what's happening to the Palestinians. Because if they did, something would have happened.
Would have already
yesterday.
happened. Yeah.
Exactly. So I do not see the point in trying to debate, humanize, or talk to these politicians in a way that you can try to appeal to their humanity, and not just on this issue, really any issue, to get them to do the right thing. I do not see the point. This is kind of why I think even on our network, we have made the stance, we are not interviewing. It's a waste of time. These people in power are a waste of time. And a waste of your energy.
As a whole.
Right. A waste of energy. And quite frankly, look, Breaking Points is going to benefit off of this due to views and clicks. Because as you said, Crystal did the bare minimum of what commentators, journalists are supposed to do. But in the grand scheme of things, this interview is not going to change the situation of what's happening in Gaza. And that's what makes me infuriated, because we talked about stories like, well, especially you've talked about stories like this for well over a year. And I feel like it's only now that people are now getting, we're in catastrophe mode, so we must say something about this. And they're only saying something about this because, especially among Democrats, this issue has been polling very high on people's minds. So they know if they don't say the right thing, that's really their jobs right now. That's the only reason why people are caring about this a little bit more, because it will affect their position. Whereas, again, this is a 19-year-old, and granted, it's not a child, but he or she is talking about her hunger pains.
And they probably are. They just got out of university. They're a child still, like, right. Young adult, whatever, but barely,
Right. And then and I'll get to this, because I saw the interview, and this infuriated me to know, and this part especially, like Slotkin mentioned, because Crystal, again, trying to appeal to her humanity, was like, I'm a mother and I'm seeing these mothers with their starving children. What do you plan to do? And Slotkin mentioned, I've been talking to Jewish rabbis and Islamic leaders, and they are making the decision to send baby formula over to Gaza. that's what I'm working on right now. Lady, the problem is mothers are dying. How can you send fucking formula when the babies themselves do not have mothers to give it to them, if they're even lucky to give it to them? And what about everyone else? So you're going to keep the babies alive for maybe a day, but not this young person who's trying to make something of themselves, hungry, but trying to study, trying to make something of themselves. Isn't their life any more valuable than a baby? And I think that's kind of the thing that infuriates me, because this is a senator who is saying that's the most she can do right now, where you have more power to do a hell of a lot more. Like, I expect like formula and all that kind of stuff. That's something that we would do, but that's the power that we have, not a fucking politician. Like, so you minimize your responsibility and your job in order to try to save face.
Bro, they're already
trying
fucking
to give cover to Gaza.
They're fucking complicit in 9 ways to fucking Sunday. They can try to fucking lie about it, but we all know they voted for Iron Dome funding. They voted for military funding. They've given Israel every fucking last thing they've wanted, time and time again. Like, zero politicians can save face over this. Some of them are trying. Don't let them. It's very easy. Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't even be fucking, like... I don't even pay attention to them, because I already know. You know? Like, it's time to work outside that fucking system. Like, right now is the time for action.
That's the one thing that
the unheard. And there's only one language the unheard use. So...
Right. The one thing that I appreciate about that interview was that it was a Democrat that was saying that bullshit, because it's very easy to say that Republicans think that way. And this is definitely a bipartisan issue. Yeah. So, right. So it
third
just
parties
kind of proves
can be just as fucking bad on this issue too. So,
right. But it kind of just proves to me how useless it is to talk to politicians, to them, to whether green, Democrat, red. Like, it doesn't
stop paying attention to them.
Stop paying attention to them. Stop platforming them, because they're going to say or try to say the thing to kind of appease you, but they're not going to necessarily take the action to do it. Like, and that's the thing that makes me mad, is because a lot of people that I know are kind of satisfied with politicians who say the right thing versus doing the right thing. Like, we don't need people to say shit. We need people to actually have balls to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this just kind of proves to me that, and no offense to anyone in our space who interviews politicians, but I'm going to be looking at you with a side eye more so now, because they don't do anything. And they don't want to do anything. They only are trying to, again, the electoralism. They're just trying to get your vote. And once you vote for them, they'll wash their hands and say, okay, I don't have to do anything, bought off. So I'm going to listen to what my donors say versus what you might say on your little show. So, yeah. So, again, it just infuriates me that now, I think in a lot of ways, mainstream is playing catch up to the things that you especially have been talking about for the last year. When we've brought this kind of attention as far as this is going to become an emergency issue, and now people are talking about it as if they've been talking about this issue for as long as we have, which I'm like, no, the fuck you haven't. So,
I mean, you know, I feel
even among
about
our colleagues in our space, who really haven't given this issue really the kind of respect and the urgency it deserves up until now. Only because it's a trending topic now. Since I was away, that now people are deciding, oh, we see a couple of pictures of malnourished children, that now we need to talk about this a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not a time for words. It's time for hands to start doing the talking, in my opinion. So
yeah.
But you brought this.
I actually
Caitlin
didn't.
Johnstone. I didn't put it in here.
Oh. I totally forgot I put this in here.
Yep.
God, I got so feuded. But but I think Caitlin kind of brings up a lot of points, and I think, sometimes we kind of have issues with Caitlin, but I think she's been fairly solid on this issue at least. So, we know her that she does articles every now and again on her, on her Substack. So she titled this article "Know Them by Their Fruits."
Yeah, which
so
is
you know what? Let's just listen to it.
Isn't that
And then,
alluding to strange fruits? I think.
Probably.
I do believe.
Know them by their fruits. They're doing it right in front of us. Right in front of us. So many people have dedicated their entire lives working to expose the criminality of the empire, and then the empire comes right out and commits a live-streamed genocide right in front of us. Whistleblowers, investigative journalists, authors, documentarians, conspiracy analysts, peace activists. Their whole lives devoted to the task of uncovering the crimes of the undeclared empire we live under and drawing attention to them, saying, look, see, we really are ruled by monsters. Only for the monsters to come right out and intentionally starve children to death on all our screens, all around the world. People like me are almost redundant at this current point in history. I've been writing about the depravity of the empire for years, thousands of articles and millions of words, and I have never said anything that illuminates the reality of our situation nearly as well as the fact that Western governments and media have openly colluded with Israel to exterminate a group of innocent people because they're the wrong ethnicity. I mean, what could I possibly say about that they're not already saying themselves? The message is already there, fully baked, perfect, complete. They are telling us everything we could possibly need to know. There's nothing I could add. I don't have much use for scripture, but if I had to pick a favorite line from the Bible, it would be, "You will know them by their fruits." Those 7 little words cut through all the lies and distortions of life under the Western Empire, because they tell us to stop paying attention to all the spin and PR and justification and excuses we hear from the imperial propaganda machine, and just look at the products of the empire on their own. Ignore their words and watch the results of their actions. Those tiny skeletal bodies you're seeing on your social media feed are the fruits of the empire. The shredded, eviscerated, decapitated children you've been seeing in footage from Gaza since 2023 are the fruits of the empire. This is known now, and it can never be unknown. As Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. People know themselves much better than you do. That's why it's important to stop expecting them to be something other than who they are. This is who they are. This is who our leaders are. This is who our complicit news media are. This is what Israel is. This is what Zionism is. This is what the empire is. This is what Western civilization is. We know that now. We know them by their fruits. This is who they are, and it's who they'll always be. That's why it's important never to forget what they've shown us about themselves in Gaza, and to never, ever forgive them. Our rulers have shown us that they must not be allowed to rule any longer. The empire has shown us that it should not be allowed to dominate our planet any longer. The apartheid state of Israel has shown us that it should not be allowed to exist any longer. Western supremacism, Zionism, racism, and imperialism have shown us that these things must be eradicated from our world. They have planted seeds of knowledge inside you about who they are and the status quo we're being asked to consent to. Let those seeds sprout and grow. Tend to them with care. Help them to flourish. Someday, the tree that they planted in us will bear fruit of its own.
Right. And I think, again, to say to you, I think you've done a good job, especially of trying to plant the fruit of awareness and kind of show the humanity of the reality of what's happening in Gaza and having our audience be aware of it. And, we received a call, from Palestinians to not stop talking. And I think you especially have really honored that.
As much as I appreciate the compliment, I learned it from watching journalists above me who say, go to the regions, talk to these people, get their perspectives, because it's the only way you're going to. So, I definitely feel like that's important to not lose the humanity of this, Right. So,
and I think I do want to appreciate you because, and I've admitted this here, like, if I can just be wrong with you for a second, like there have been times where it just got so, before our break, like it just got so overwhelming for me to talk about it. I just got fatigued because I
Yeah.
was like, I don't want to keep talking about this every single week because it's the
Yeah.
same shit every single week
Battle
and nothing is
fatigue.
changing. And then it's like, I think my issue is you're talking like people are choosing to talk to people. Yes, they have power, but then not using it in the way that they should because they don't want to change it.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's kind of like, why are you even bothering talking to these people to waste? The only benefit is that you're going to get a viral moment. Like it's not going to help.
I mean, the people you should be
people
talking
in Gaza
to
and
are the ones with the trigger fingers capable of dealing with this problem. Those are the ones you pressure. There's a reason why people are upset at Arab countries because they're the most like close enough to the problem to deal with it at this point. And other countries like China and Russia, and why them being complicit is just as bad, and us for being complicit, but it's just the individual person doesn't have a lot of power to deal with this. Like it's going to take something bigger than that.
Look.
So
right, I totally get people's, they're feeling their need to do something, anything.
Yeah.
I totally get all of that. But at the same time, if we're going to do anything, it has to be done in a strategic way and not in a way where it's kind of frivolous.
Yeah, I mean, look at what Palestine Action has been doing. Look at what, there's a reason why they're now labeled a terrorist group, right? Even though they've harmed 0 individuals and they've only hurt property. It's which property have they harmed? The actual military industrial complex that keeps this going, and to my American cohorts, I suggest learning those actions and copying them, because there's not much else you can do. So, stay within the legal bounds, but you got to do something. So,
right. I don't know, but I think that's just my frustration with all of this is that I feel like in a very subtle way, people are trying to benefit off the demise of Palestinians, whether they intend to or not.
Yeah.
I think it's just a very convenient side effect. And I get people's, like people are getting frustrated but I feel like the way that we're kind of doing this in independent media in a lot of ways, and not us included in certain ways, is wrong. Like, we, again, talking to politicians and trying to, bring their humanity or sending stuff over to Gaza again, it's not even to ensure that aid's going to get there in the hope that aid is going to get there. Like, that's the issue that I'm like, like, this is not the way to help them. The way that we can help them at this point is to ensure the destruction of the systems that are causing this to be.
Like,
do I know how I'm going to do that? No.
It's not round one patty cake time. Like it's bottom of the ninth. Like, we got to do some shit. So
right. But I also feel like we're not in this country. We're not desperate enough to even help ourselves, much less people in other places around the world. And I think that's what kills me the most is we're so kind of distraught and distracted by our own issues here that we can't even think clearly in terms of that others who are perhaps worse off than us, but we're not in the position to help them because we're dealing with our own shit here, which some of it is valid, but we're still relatively privileged that we're in a position where we can cause chaos if we really wanted to. And we're not doing it. And that's what makes me kind of, honestly, that's the thing that makes me the most exacerbated right now, is that we meaning the people, have a position that we can fuck things up if we choose to, but we won't because
there's a lot of
we're so embedded
consequences
and so isolated with our own issues. And like a lot of the concept. But even my dad said this when I was visiting. Revolution is not joyful. We tend to think of revolution as like this happy thing. Revolution means death. That could be literal death.
There's that meme of like, violence will never solve anything. Opens history book. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, no.
Right.
Oh no.
Right.
Like.
Right. The idea of revolution means blood is being shed. So, but we're not willing to go that far.
Because it's coming whether we want it to or not, one way or another.
Right.
So, make sure you're ready. But anyway, I wonder why we're demonetized on YouTube, Collin. I kind of wonder sometimes. Couldn't be talking about revolution could do that. So if you want to help us out anyway, you can scan that QR code on your screen. Go to kodashv.com/Indie News Network. Links are always in the doobly-doo. And if you can't do that, supposedly there's an algorithm you can influence. You could try and like and maybe subscribe if you haven't done that already. You could share the video. You could leave comments and let us know what you think, But otherwise, we just appreciate you watching. Thank you. Yay. We get to more of that in a second. Should we check the chats for a bit?
Yeah. There are a few comments. Kill your egregores. Israel's finished.
Yep.
A starving man knows no God. Nietzsche. I argue the opposite.
I'm
argue
with
starving
them.
man.
I'm with fucking Nietzsche. Nah, fuck that. He's not thinking about that shit. You can't. Your animalistic instincts overtake that. You're not going to be worried about your spirit.
I could see it in that way. But I can also see it in the opposite way of, I think you realize your humanity and your mortality in terms of.
Well, I think that's the thing with humans.
Finite.
Humans forget that they're fucking animals first and foremost. We have this idea that we're better than that, and we really aren't. I partially blame those religions for thinking that, but you're one fucking missed meal away from doing some fucked up shit. So, but
kill your egregores again. Your tax dollars are funding this. Silence is complacent. Hilo Nostrum. I don't know what else to say anymore. The time for talking about it is over. It's time to do something about it. Natalie in the chat, if no one is there to feed the babies, then what's that worth? Exactly. And I think that's the point. How can you send formula when the families are dead? Or the children are orphaned? Who's going to feed them? And that's assuming they get it. Like, that's kind of one of the issues that I had with the child tax credit in certain ways. It's like, how can you give children the money but not give
the parents who need to spend it
to take care of the children financially? Like, that makes no sense to me. Take care of the parents. Then they'll be able to take care of the kids.
Talking about how aid is sitting at the Israeli border and the Israelis are standing in front of the trucks, physically blocking them. If they did anything about it, the drivers would be committing an act of war, and Egypt And at this point, like, what are we waiting for? Like, they've not listened to any of the niceties. Like, we tried going about this through the UN, through like all the normal means. Like, now it might be time to like stand on business, you know?
Right.
So Yemen's certainly willing to. Iran's certainly willing to. Like, you know,
Chris H, I think this is in relation to the truckers, possibly.
Yeah, truckers convoy
I kind of
stuff.
disagree, at least. Yeah, I kind of disagree. At least it helps get the politicians' attention. At the end of the day, you have to get someone in the position of power to do something. We can't do it from where we are. I beg to differ at this point.
Yeah, I think
really beg to differ at this
they're not listening. Unless you can make them afraid somehow. I think the way is to go around that, because they're not even the real masters anyway. You got to attack the people with the real power. That's the one with the resources, the money. Like, that's why Palestinian Action, because they went and took out Elbit Systems and, you know, all these things that are literally directly involved, you know? So that's, I think, what's necessary. And, you know, if people wanted to protest those things and show up at, you know, Northrop Grumman and Raytheon and make those CEOs afraid of things, then yeah, that might do some stuff. Yeah, plus Indy's talking about, you know,
Nostrum.
Go ahead. You were saying?
Neil Nostrum said, revolution is no child's play. A protest is not a party in the street. That's what it turned into for the truckers in Canada. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and it happens frequently. So people want to feel like they're doing something, and it's an easy way to manipulate them by making them feel like they did things. Indy talking about, you know, the truckers, and they cut off their bank and banking deregulation. That's a big deal. So, you know, they come for your monies and your resources before, and it's very easy to shut you down that way. Chris, Russia right now is fighting all of NATO, and if Russia did something, it would lead to World War III. Yeah, at what point, like, I think it's already here, you know? Like, they're just supposed to sit idly by, like, Israel controls it. You know, I don't think America wants that smoke either. So, you know, like they were doing things, but
like at some point, you know, what's your North Star?
Yeah.
What are your morals? Like, there are certain times, yes, compromise is necessary. And then at other times where there's non-negotiables that you have to stand
like, if they were tactically making
and not waver on it. Like, and I believe, honestly, just my moral compass is telling me this is the thing right now, and we've been saying this, that we shouldn't compromise on.
Yeah.
Like, so, and to kind of sit and watch, though, especially if you're human and you know this,
like tangible things need to occur for those compromises to be worth it. And I've not seen that.
Right.
I've seen monetary gain and resource control. So, like, you know, like, you can't be talking about how America's a paper tiger and then suddenly back away from that, you know? Like, we got to get something needs to be done. But anyway, just in lieu of time, we should get to our next one.
Yeah.
But so kind of a continuation from your story. I wanted to go a little more in depth into specifics, right? But
sure.
We talked about you know, how worst case famine is playing out, right? We're literally in stage 5, right? This is from Dave DeCamp over at Anti-War. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, the IPC, a global hunger monitor, said in an alert on Tuesday that the worst case scenario famine is currently playing out in the Gaza Strip due to the U.S.-backed Israeli siege on the Palestinian territory. The alert comes as Gaza Health Ministry has reported dozens of starvation deaths over the past week, and photos of emaciated children have increased international pressure on Israel to ease the blockade. Mounting evidence shows that widespread starvation, malnutrition, and disease are driving a rise in hunger-related deaths. Latest data indicates that famine thresholds have been reached for food consumption in most of the Gaza Strip and for acute malnutrition in Gaza City, the IPC said. Eva Bartlett, friend of the show, 85% of Gaza's population have entered the fifth stage of malnutrition, the most critical and dangerous phase, which is often irreversible even if food becomes available in the future. Right? So this is point of no return. They are starving these people to death. This is what a genocide looks like. So, Gazans are facing irreversible damage because of the forced starvation. They have reached the final stage of starvation, called IPC Stage 5, which is damage to permanent multi-organ failure that leads to sudden cardiac death. So we are at physical ramifications of this. People are dying of starvation. Like, that has been documented. So, I don't know what else is needed to be documented to people to do something, but again, I wanted to bring an actual experience, right? We've talked about the Gaza humanitarian centers and how they're just death traps. So this is from Rafat Ibrahim over at the EI, which shout out to the EI for bringing the voices of these people. They've been doing great work. But Rafat writes, I knew we were close to the aid site when I saw a large mass of people gathered in front of me. It had taken us all night to get here. My friend Sadah Abu Sadah and I had left Al-Mawasi near Khan Yunis at 1:30 a.m. and headed south on the coastal road Al-Rashid Street towards Rafah. Neighbors in Al-Mawasi had told us to get to the aid site as early as possible because there were not enough provisions for everyone. We thought that by leaving this early, we had a chance to get food. We walked slowly. On our left were miserable rows of tents. On our right was the seashore, calm on the surface, but with Israeli gunboats lined up along the horizon. Close enough to be visible with the naked eye, we were not alone in our walk. Many others were headed the same way. An elderly man leaned on his cane and said in commiseration, how hard it is to be hungry. God. We had 12 kilometers ahead of us, a potentially reasonable distance for a well-fed and nourished person. 12 kilometers. 12 kilometers ahead of them. But we were neither well-fed. That's a good amount.
That's about 6 miles.
6 miles, probably close. But we were...
Yeah. So it's,
yeah. But we were neither well-fed nor nourished. We walked slowly from exhaustion and hunger. The only calories fueling my body were from scant amounts of lentils and pasta that I had obtained with great difficulty and effort in previous days. My mother, brother, and 5 sisters were back at our tent in Al-Mawasi. Dizzy from hunger, they could barely move. I could no longer bear to see my family wither from starvation. This was why I was walking along the coastal road in the dark. On Eid al-Adha, the 6th of June, tired and hungry, headed towards a so-called American Aid Center, a place that had declared itself on its social media page as a source of relief. The aid sites run by the American and Israeli-run Gaza Humanitarian Foundation only opened on the 27th of May, but by early June, it was already understood in Gaza that they were also death sites. Israeli troops were shooting.
Which we talked about.
And killing us, correct. Yet, the more news spread about these massacres, the more news spread about the aid sites themselves. It is a cruel irony that we are so starved that in the news of massacres, we also hear that there is food available and that there is a possibility that we might get some if we can only survive the site itself. Here we die of hunger, Dodd said, and there we may die of bullets. At around 3:30, yep, I might as well get it over with. Like, we walked into the crowd of tens of thousands of people. Ahead of the crowd was what we assumed was the aid site, but the road was blocked by concrete blocks. We stood and waited for some kind of sign to enter the aid site. It did not come. The scene of the elderly, women and men crowding at night and sitting on the rubble of houses or in the sand is a sad sight that makes everyone feel humiliated, their dignity brutally violated. I suggested to my friend that we should go and sit on the beach about 20 meters away until the sun rose. As we walked towards the beach, we had to walk past the watchtowers where snipers were stationed. Sadah pointed out that the surveillance cameras and the various red and white lights beaming from other mechanisms on the tower, saying that the soldiers used those to strengthen their transmissions. Not a minute passed until the soldiers were firing at us. Bullets flew past us at alarming speed. We backed away from the beach and went to the other side of the road, where people were sitting on rubble. We were shaken and demoralized and considered heading back to Al-Mawasi. How will we continue, Saada said, knowing that I didn't have the answer. I just kept in my mind that I was there to retrieve food and bring it back to feed my family of 6. Like, there was 6 people there, right? And then some.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have any solutions. We continued to wait. Every few minutes, we heard more bullets. Eventually, we heard a group of people yelling, "Martyr, martyr," and carrying a person who had been shot. Bullets continued to fly around us. Small stones flew in the air at us when the bullet hit the ground. The way to know everything here is through fire, that is, the firing of weapons. The occupation forces shoot a shell in an area and it explodes, meaning do not go there. Quadcopters patrol the area where the shells fall and then shoot at anyone who approaches. People are only certain they cannot go into an area because they are faced with a line of fire. We hid behind rubble and tried to protect ourselves from death. At 6 a.m., when dawn broke, a voice over a loudspeaker said in Arabic that we could enter the aid site, which was an additional 3 kilometers away. Everyone ran towards the site. Thousands of people. Concrete blocks are painted in red with phrases such as Defense Army and Dangerous Combat Zones, and surrounded by barbed wire. At a certain point, the path narrowed and only one person could pass in between the blocks at a time. It was never wide enough for 2 people to pass side by side, but people rushed and entered around the blocks or through the ruins of houses nearby. Farther on, there was an area surrounded by a tall fence, much higher than the height of a person. Inside the site, English-speaking individuals allowed people to enter. There were some empty boxes that said GHF and that once contained food. Very little was left by the time we arrived. One of the occupation soldiers fired a bullet into the crowd and hit a 50-year-old man in front. The man fell down and he looked dead. A group of people carried him away. One man held up his bloody hands at the soldiers and yelled at them, "You killed the man." I don't think the soldiers understood what the man said to them, but they did understand the bloody hands. Minutes later, trucks arrived and unloaded their cargo. The amount of aid was barely enough for a few thousand. We were many more than that. We arrived at the distribution point, but there was nothing left. We walked around and tried to find anything left inside the fence. It was like we were in a prison. It seems that we will return empty-handed, I told Saada. I don't know what we will do, he said. They are waiting for me to return with flour. We spent half an hour inside the place, still nothing. We were in a desert prison surrounded by weapons, facing the Israeli soldiers on empty stomachs. We left around 7:30 a.m. and walked back in silence. Saada said that we would have to come back the next day, but that this time we would not try to take a rest on the beach, lest the soldiers shoot at us again. I replied with a sad sarcasm, "You have formed bad memories quickly, my friend." We returned to Al-Mawasi empty-handed, though we carried with us new truths that no one should ever have to be exposed to. This is what it is to be an unwanted person. 2 days later, by the 8th of June, it was reported that 130 Palestinians had been killed at these sites. Since then, this number has risen to around 900. So this is from Israel-Palestine News, right? They write, 10 die of starvation, Gaza doctors becoming too weak to treat patients. War on Gaza, day 656. Doctors are in a state of extreme exhaustion. Some have fainted in the operating room, said Dr. Muhammad Abu Salmiya, the director of Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, who said that like the people of Gaza, staff had not received any aid or had any meals in the past 48 hours. Medical services will be affected because our staff will not be able to hold out any longer in the face of this famine. So this is from Translating Palestine, right? And this was a dinner shared by 2 journalists stationed in the Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis, right? So similar situation, and this was the meal they had. Who remained steadfast in front of the Nasser Medical Complex. A little oil and salt. Half a tomato and 2 pieces of flatbread.
Bread.
For 2 people. I mean, Samir needs 4 of these loaves to feel somewhat full. Today there is only 1 loaf. For both of them with 1 tomato and some olive oil. This is dinner. What do you think, guys? Thank God this is a blessing. This is what's available. What are we to do? You're a blessing. Thank God. Enjoy. So I wrote some bread and a bit of oil. They still call it a blessing. Keep in mind, someone probably risked their life just to get the flour for that bread. Ones in power sit happy with full fridges. Some of the food that makes it in has also been reported to be laced or poisoned or otherwise tainted. So things are not looking good. Dave DeCamp, 14 more Palestinians starved to death in Gaza. Right? So the Gaza Health Ministry said on Monday that at least 14 more Palestinians have died of starvation. Gaza Strip hospitals recorded 14 new deaths in the past 24 hours due to famine and malnutrition. That brings the number of deaths from famine to 147, including 88 children. A source at Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City told Al Jazeera that among the dead was Muhammad Ibrahim Adas, an infant who died of malnutrition due to the shortage of baby formula. Babies have been especially vulnerable since malnourished mothers are unable to produce breast milk. Mondoweiss, Palestinian women were told to go to U.S.-run aid sites in Gaza. They were killed and beaten instead. So, I don't know if you knew this, right? But they made it to where those GHF aid sites were like female only, right? So the Israeli-backed and U.S.-run Gaza Humanitarian Foundation said that its distribution on Thursday would only be for Palestinian women. Eyewitnesses say that the GHF staff pepper sprayed them and beat them with batons. 2 women were killed. So Ragda Abu Adeh, an aid seeker from today's incident, arrived at the site at 5 a.m. from Deir al-Balad. I belong to a family of 9 daughters and 1 brother, she says. My father was shot in the head at one of the aid sitters weeks ago. He is now bedridden and immobile. When we heard that the distribution was for women only, I walked to the location to get food, but I did not witness any food distribution. It was distribution of death. The American organization said the distribution would be organized and safe and that every woman would receive an aid box, Abu Adeh continued. We went there immediately because we're dying of hunger. But we arrived only to see the Palestinian women being humiliated, beaten, sprayed with pepper, stuck with batons, and bullets fired over our heads. Abu Adeh says that shortly after arriving at the distribution center, Israeli tanks and armored vehicles that have been stationed outside the center advanced toward them, opening heavy machine gun fire over their heads. Then there were tear gas canisters launched among us and stun grenades thrown directly at us, she recounts. They brought us here to openly humiliate us. I didn't receive any food. Many of the women who came didn't receive any food. Maybe 20% of those who arrived got something. The rest were subjugated to humiliation and oppression. Abu Ade described seeing a pregnant woman struggling and bleeding in the middle of the crowd. Due to the chaos and fear of being shot, she then says that one of the GHA staff members hit her multiple times on her stomach with a baton. She screamed that she was pregnant, but no one listened. Instead, they hit her more until she collapsed to the ground. Some women managed to pull her away, and she was taken to a hospital. Abu Ade also describes how the GHF employees pepper sprayed women in the face until it burned, and also recounts the use of obscene insults that were hurled at them by GHF staff that spoke in Arabic. Why were we called to this? To be humiliated in every possible way? Abu Ade says, we don't want their aid. We want them to shut down this place and for food distribution to return to what it was before this organization into lethal weapons arrives. It doesn't feed us, it kills us. And the excuse for why that food distribution is not the way it is because Hamas allegedly was stealing the aid. You were saying?
Keep in mind this organization is American.
Yeah. Yep. So we're flat out fucked, says Jax Page. Fiorella says, happy Saturday. The fact that children are starving in Gaza and there's still a genocide, but Israel hasn't been held accountable or stopped, while those with power to stop them aren't doing it. Says everything about who we are as a species. There's no excuse. We're doomed. Why are so many appalled that Israel is starving Gazans? Why now? Answer, because it's being posed as a humanitarian hunger crisis, while bombing them was justified in their mind because they deserved it for October 7th, Hamas, war, etc. Either way, Israel doesn't get held accountable. Mara Osman, Malek SH writes on Facebook from Gaza, a clarification for our fellow Arabs has become necessary as the ongoing confusion surrounding aid deliveries is causing us real psychological harm. On average, only 15 to 25 trucks are entering Gaza daily. They are completely looted by thieves, warlords, and addicts, and the goods are then resold at exorbitant prices on the black market. This means absolutely nothing has changed. Airdrop aid is futile and usually airdropped into no-go zones for people to be shot at. The cargo of a single plane is equivalent to just 2 trucks, and it's an expensive, ineffective exercise. The drops often land in areas controlled by the military or on tents housing displaced families, rendering them practically inaccessible. And I don't know if you remember stories from a week ago where aid was literally dropped on people, killing them. So
right, and this also brings a certain flotilla.
Yeah, single aid point distribution ain't gonna fucking work either.
We will not name, right, of a person we will not name here, but you guys know who this person is.
A couple of people involved with that.
Right, who went in the pretext of sending formula.
Right.
You know, and according to Indy, the aid is going to end up in a no-go zone. So Palestinians won't be able to access that anyway. So again, this is kind of like, on one hand, I kind of get why people are doing it, but again, what's your intent and what is your strategy in order to ensure? Because even with that story, like, and this is my argument that I've been saying to you and Indy personally, like, the idea of the aid is not the main story. Like, the actions that happened to this person is. And to me, that shouldn't be the main story.
Yeah.
Like, if you're intending to get the aid, why didn't the aid get there?
Yeah.
And
then on top of that, a single point aid distribution system clearly hasn't fucking worked there. Like,
right.
Anyway,
so,
to our
so and again, it kind of brings it about the idea of like, what makes you think you guys are so special that somehow magically you will be able to get this aid through?
Yeah,
like, what
partially because of the celebrity, I think. which Israel, I think, has called it it's a selfie ship. It's performative. But that's just me.
Right.
Knowing who's behind that, I definitely feel that way. But to our Egyptian brothers, we appreciate the intent, but throwing bottles of rice and lentils into the sea is sheer nonsense and a waste of resources. They do not and will not reach us. The videos showing successful retrievals are mere theatrics staged by war opportunists. The fruits you've seen circulating online, a handful stolen off aid trucks with prices reaching $105 per kilo, they were purchased and distributed by a few individuals and corrupt donation middlemen solely to keep your donations flowing their way. The rest of the population hasn't even caught a glimpse of them. The bottom line, nothing has changed. The famine continues. The number of children dying from malnutrition is still rising. We are still collapsing in the streets. We are still being starved into annihilation. So, Eva Corrine Bartlett, former U.S. Special Forces veteran, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, says he routinely witnessed Israeli forces and American colleagues deliberately targeting and killing unarmed Palestinian civilians at GHF anti-humanitarian death traps. They're criminal. In my entire career, I have never witnessed the level of brutality and use of indiscriminate and unnecessary force against a civilian population, an unarmed, starving population. I've never witnessed that in all the places I've been deployed to war until I was in Gaza at the hands of the IDF and the U.S. contractors. Without question, I witnessed war crimes by the IDF. Without a doubt, using artillery rounds, mortar rounds, firing tank rounds into unarmed civilians is a war crime. And, homie, they may be unarmed, but you're not. You see shit happens, you got a fucking duty to protect innocent civilians. Like, you might have to risk it for that biscuit. Just saying. Like, you went over there. Vanessa, another Zionist lie, crashes and burns. No reports alleging Hamas benefited from U.S.-funded supplies, according to a slide presentation of the findings seen by Reuters. So, again, this has to do with, this is one of the reasons why they changed aid systems and moved UNRWA and was claiming that Hamas was doing that. Meanwhile, their own ISIS brigades that are funded by Israel. So, Dave DeCamp, Israel is starving the Palestinians with help from the U.S. U.S. government review found no evidence of systematic looting or aid by Hamas. We also know that Israel has been arming a gang that has been responsible for the looting. So, here's Reuters. International U.S. government analysis found no evidence of systemic theft by the Palestinian militant group Hamas of U.S.-funded humanitarian supplies. The analysis, which has been previously reported, was conducted by a bureau within the U.S. Agency for International Development and completed in late June. It examined 156 incidents of theft or loss reported by U.S. aid partner organizations between October and May. So, Dave DeCamp calling it out. But I'll end with this. This is from Monda Weiss that says, don't stop talking about the famine in Gaza. Israel wants you to believe that airdrops and symbolic aid trucks will solve the famine in Gaza. Don't believe them. These measures are not meant to end hunger, only to quell growing global outrage as the genocide continues unchecked. Israel wants the famine to appear complicated, something out of its hands and nearly impossible to resolve. However, improving quality of life and ending the crisis can be done quickly and easily by simply opening the crossings and allowing aid, medicine, and commercial goods to enter. It is striking how they tried to invent other methods such as airdrops or the GHF, but these are well-planned performances. Both share humiliation and carry the underlying message that aid will not reach everyone equally. They are solutions that are not meant to solve. Don't stop talking about the famine and genocide. Don't let Israel and the complicit Arab countries manipulate you into thinking they've made efforts or a difference. Famine isn't over. It still exists, and the killing has not stopped for almost 2 fucking years. 2 years we've been talking about this. When will people listen? Thoughts, Care Bear?
I mean, people are listening. People are seeing it.
Yeah.
But again, as I said earlier in the last segment, it's again little, and it's funny, we got a comment like a few weeks ago before we went on hiatus. Basically, someone was saying that, whether it was a bot, whatever, basically saying that you and I are cosplaying
Oh yeah, whatever.
revolutionaries, and it's like first of all, we have never. I'm not sure about you.
There's
but
much better things to cosplay on top of that. Just saying.
I have never, ever said on this show or otherwise that I want to be a revolutionary. Far from it. If anything, I say I am a political commentator, and I wouldn't even call myself a good one at that.
Yeah, you don't want me leading the charge. I'm going to be fucking making rash decisions. Right. Sorry.
Right.
I'm not that guy.
I mean, they might have disagreed with the segment that we did that they made that comment, but we definitely do not call ourselves revolutionary.
That comment was under fucking people thinking Mom Donnie was the fucking, yeah, fuck you. We know better. So we know how this works.
And we listen to people who have been in the field that know better, that we actually agree with. So, but that being said, I do not have the answers to this, but that's not my job. Well, it's not to say that's not my job. I'm not in a position to really do a whole lot other than talk, and educate you guys.
I'm looking for the opportunities. The minute I see some opportunities, I'll let you guys know. That's what we're here for. So,
Anyway, but I don't know. It's just, it's just, I don't know. What else more can I say other than what I haven't said already?
I feel you.
It's not to say the people that are responsible, that can change things, are not doing anything. And again, it's the idea that certain people might feel that if you talk to the right politicians and say the nice words and appeal to whatever humanity they have in their hearts, that somehow they will be changed and see the light and will come to the error of their ways and make the change. And again, it's the idea, if they really wanted to do it, they would have done it already. They don't care. So stop platforming these people in the hope that you think that your words or your actions is going to make them do the right thing. They know what the right thing is to do. They're not doing it because they're bought, paid, and sold by corporations and lobbyists that benefit from this genocide.
It seems that the only time you get in a position of power is if you like the people that are in power.
Right. So, and I don't know. Again, it's like, I think we're trying to make heroes of certain people in doing the bare minimum, or I would argue even not the right thing to do. But I get it because we're desperate. And so I think really the talks that we should be having now, what can be done seriously, as you keep saying, to make politicians scared? What will actually make them scared, and what will make corporations and lobbyists scared that they are forced to do the right thing? Because it's not going to happen just by nice words from us. And again, appealing to people's humanity when they have. And that's the problem. We assume that these people have a conscience. They don't have any. So if you don't have a conscience, you're a fucking demon. So, and you need to deal with demons appropriately. And that's not with nice words. So sorry, but that's the way it is. So tactically, we need to do something different. And again, I'm not a revolutionary. I do not have the answers to this. You know, I'm not sure even within our family, and I don't expect them to necessarily have the answers to this anyway. The only thing that we can do right now is kind of talk about these things and hope we get to the right people that maybe, just maybe, there could be a way that we can kind of get together and perhaps form some type of strategy among, you know, the working class in this country to actually cause something. But I don't know what it is.
You know my strategy.
So
GUILLOTINE. Yeah, what might seem barbaric is the last resort to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I feel you. I kind of think you just going for the actual real, like, real power above the politicians is what you should do. You know?
Yeah.
So, but
well, that's what I
about,
mean by lobbyists and
yeah,
that. But
for sure, talking about that kind of stuff and looking for solutions is why YouTube's decided we shouldn't get any money. So, if you want to get around that system, you can go to co-b.com/Indie News Network or scan that QR code on your screen. Links are always in the description below. But other than that, you could just do all the algorithm stuff. Like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We did it. We made it. You're welcome. We did it.
Let's check these last. There were a couple that I wanted to get to before we head out of here. And that, actually, stay, guys, stick around, because we do have a surprise at the end. So hopefully, I think a lot of you are still here.
Yeah.
So let's see. Think about here. Nally in the chat. Oh, what a living nightmare.
Yeah.
Nihilo Nostrum 100% Collin. We need to plan the radical plans, the ones we can't talk about. Right. And that's the other thing too. Those things that, you know, strategy, we can't say here. They should be left offline. That might be something that should happen in person, in a private setting, and having those conversations, you know, because again, we're being watched. So we don't want, you know, the powers that be to kind of know our plans, depending on what they are. So yeah, so moving some of those conversations and talks away from independent media, at least in a form like this, yeah, is definitely the way to go. Let's see. Yellow Nostrum is called making excuses. Also, we are cooked already. The frog is cooked before it dies in the pot. Like how if you're starved long enough, it won't matter if the food is available. Vicky in chat, thank you, Reef. And Collin, thank you for being here. Nihilo Nostrum again. It's okay, guys. Not every revolutionary soldier. Soldiers need cooks and communications experts. Can win without information. So yeah,
although
that's
I do
our
feel
role. Like
sometimes I feel like a soldier stuck at the desk job, you know, but whatever.
Right. But I think, you know, but I do agree, like,
yeah,
you need the information. So, and because people are not necessarily reporting it, again, like we're trying to bring, you know, the perspective of Palestinians in terms of these stories. We try to connect with people who know or more experts in this than us, because we're dumb, to share more of the information with you guys so that you're able to make more informed choices, but to kind of see the gaps that mainstream media or even things that you learned, you know, it might be hidden from you or things that you do not even know. That's our job. So, yeah, so that regard, we're very happy to do that. But, you know, and there's more than one way to be a revolutionary. But I think, you know, I think the term has kind of been pigeonholed into someone like, I don't know, like a Malcolm X type figure and all that, which could be that. But it's a multifaceted rule. And, but, but again, for me, I wouldn't call myself a revolutionary. I just call myself a person that gives a fuck. That's it, really. So, there was one I wanted to read. I think it was from Vicky. And I think that will be it for tonight. No, I don't see it now. Oh, wait. Is it? No.
KYE said, learned something today about Barbados. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Again, thank my dad for that.
People said, scare the corpse, occupy Blackstone. They're already on the edge. We can work with that. Fear is all they respond to. That's kind of where I'm at too. Go to those places where like they're actually making weapons of war. Go to the, be in those people's faces. So
right. Yeah, not our politician. And I think we need to show that pyramid again.
Yeah.
Because politicians are not really the ones in power.
No.
So, and I think we kind of go to them primarily as being like, oh, you're the top. No, they're not.
They're stenographers to power.
They're middle management.
Yeah.
So, so yeah.
Anyway,
I have to find that pyramid again. But
Kate wondering how we can go so long. Just pure unbridled, nothing else to do, mainly. Anyway.
Well, kind of making up for lost time too, since we were away for free.
We're away, yeah.
So,
but follow, get any news on Twitter. Go to the Substack. Links are always in the description below to see what's happening next week. I'm sure Indy will let people know all the things. But otherwise, we'll be back next Wednesday. So. You can get.
We might not be live. We don't know. We might have an interview, but we'll let you guys know.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Either way, but we're back. We're back-ish. For now. But yeah. It definitely be new content from us, but we may not be live. But we'll let you know.
So anyway, remember, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone. And check out our new closing.
Yeah.
There's a difference between peace and liberation, is there not? You can have injustice and have peace. Isn't that correct? Peace and be enslaved.
Yes.
So peace isn't the answer.
No.
Bye, have a great time.
Liberation is the answer.